At the very beginning, God brought the heavens and the earth into existence. A single, straightforward sentence that sets the entire Bible into motion. But have you ever wondered if there might be more to this account? Have you ever considered whether an ancient manuscript exists that supplies all the particulars that Genesis chooses not to include? Right now, we're going to explore in depth the Book of Jubilees, the concealed creation narrative that reveals how the heavens were structured, the moment angels came into being, and which cosmic happenings molded our universe before Adam drew his very first breath. But hold on, before we dive in, if this type of material brings comfort to your evening, think about liking this video and subscribing so you can stay in touch. We would really appreciate knowing where you're watching from and what hour you're listening in. So then, with no more delay, shall we get started? The manuscript that has no right to exist. Deep within the caves of Qumran, close to the Dead Sea, shrouded in total darkness for almost 2,000 years, there existed a mystery, a written work concealed from humanity until the mid-20th century arrived. This document recounts a narrative you might believe you're familiar with, yet with specifics that are going to catch you off guard. This is the Book of Jubilees, the Bible's hidden counterpart. Picture discovering a manuscript that reconstructs the opening chapters of Genesis, one that asserts it's more ancient than the Bible we know. A manuscript where angelic beings monitor your every action, where time moves in rigid 7-year intervals, and where the calendar of heaven controls all existence on our planet. This isn't some made-up story. This is Jubilees. The Dead Sea Scrolls returned this forgotten manuscript to us, one that had disappeared from Western awareness for more than 1,500 years. Ethiopian Christians preserved it as holy writing, while the remainder of the world had almost entirely forgotten its existence. Today, we have the ability to examine it once more, and what we discover is simultaneously peculiar and marvelous. Turn to the pages of Jubilees, and you step into a reality where angelic beings dictate holy history to Moses on Mount Sinai. A reality where the patriarch Enoch receives instruction in astronomy from celestial beings. A reality where demonic entities possess names and specific roles, where the universe operates on divine mechanisms, and where human will operates within narrow limits. So then, who created this enigmatic manuscript? Researchers position its composition somewhere around the 2nd century before the Common Era, during an era when Jewish distinctiveness faced danger from Hellenistic culture. The writer, whose identity will remain forever unknown, stated something audacious, that his manuscript held information more ancient and more genuine than the Torah itself. Why did Jubilees vanish from the majority of religious movements? The explanation exists in part within its inflexible perspectives. Jubilees permits very little space for modification or development. Its calendar remains permanently locked at 364 days, precisely 52 weeks. Without leap years or corrections, its commandments are everlasting and immutable. For expanding religious communities that required adaptation to fresh eras and locations, this kind of rigidity presented a difficulty. The majority of Christian assemblies turned away from Jubilees during the formation of their scriptural canon. Jewish religious teachers likewise excluded it from their accepted texts. Only within Ethiopia did it continue as sacred writing, read right alongside Genesis and Exodus as heavenly truth. For everyone else, it turned into an interesting sidenote, a direction not pursued, and yet the manuscript will not remain hidden. The concepts within Jubilees influence the worldview of the Essenes, that wilderness community responsible for concealing the Dead Sea Scrolls. Its themes resonate in primitive Christian documents. Its angels and demons surface in traditional stories throughout the Middle East. And in our present time, it communicates once again, a voice emerging from an ancient civilization with a surprisingly alternative understanding of existence. This represents a voyage into a manuscript that reconstructs the dawn of time itself, a manuscript that speaks quietly of angels maintaining cosmic documentation, of a universe where even your tiniest deeds have been inscribed on heaven's records, a manuscript that should not exist, yet it does. The Bible's removed preface. The Book of Jubilees formerly occupied a position of profound reverence within numerous faith groups. In ancient Ethiopia, it continues to be regarded as sacred writing, part of their scriptural canon, recited in places of worship, examined by religious leaders. Within the Dead Sea Scrolls, more copies of Jubilees turned up than nearly any other manuscript apart from the Hebrew Bible itself. This was not some insignificant composition. For certain communities, it was indispensable literature. Primitive Christians were familiar with this manuscript thoroughly. Church leaders from early times cited passages from it, discussed it, and occasionally valued it greatly. In Ethiopia, they never ceased viewing it as divinely inspired. In that region, they refer to it as the Little Genesis, a partner to the initial Book of Moses, supplying particulars the Bible omitted. So then, why don't the majority of Bibles contain it? The explanation brings us into the core of how holy manuscripts are selected. As Judaism developed following the temple's obliteration, religious scholars sought manuscripts that would bring together their dispersed population. Jubilees, possessing its rigid solar calendar that conflicted with the lunar one that most Jewish people observed, turned into a source of division instead of unity. Its unbending regulations appeared to permit insufficient space for rabbinical analysis. For Christians constructing their emerging faith, Jubilees introduced different complications. Its elaborate commandments might perplex fresh converts who had been instructed that Christ completed the ancient agreement. Its animated depiction of angels carrying out God's purposes on earth appeared to permit reduced space for Christ's distinct position. Gradually, in the majority of regions, it shifted from Holy Writ to intriguing ancient manuscript. Yet what causes Jubilees to be so distinctive? To begin with, there exists its perspective on time itself. The manuscript separates all of history into exact units. Jubilee intervals of 49 years. Ornate, constructed from 7 weeks of 7 years apiece. Each occurrence in history possesses its designated moment, scribed in heaven long before it takes place on earth. Then we have the celestial records, cosmic documentation maintained by angels, holding not merely the past, but the future as well. In Jubilees, nothing occurs by accident. Each birth, each death, each conflict and treaty of peace occurs in accordance with a divine schedule established at creation. Most remarkable is the way Jubilees reconstructs Genesis. It supplies conversations, introduces scenes, and clarifies motivations. When Adam and Eve experience their downfall, Jubilees informs us which creatures forfeited the ability to speak as consequence. When Cain murders Abel, Jubilees provides us the names of their sisters whom they married. The well-known narratives acquire fresh depth, fresh particulars, and occasionally fresh significance. Angels fulfill a significantly larger function than within Genesis. They exist at creation. They instruct humans in abilities and understanding. They execute punishments, and they document all human actions. One angel, never identified by name, but frequently referred to as the angel of the presence, delivers the narration of most of the manuscript, communicating directly to Moses. And we have Mastema, a figure very similar to Satan, yet possessing official responsibilities in God's assembly. He examines humans, presents accusations toward them, and commands spirits who generate difficulty. Nevertheless, he accomplishes this with God's authorization, within rigid boundaries. Evil within Jubilees fulfills heaven's larger intention. The manuscript presents itself not as some fresh disclosure, but as the most ancient truth. Understanding provided to Moses together with the Torah, subsequently forgotten for ages until recovered through this manuscript. It asserts to be more ancient and more genuine than Genesis itself. This daring assertion helped it attract adherents, but in the end caused most faith authorities to maintain it at a distance. Still, examining Jubilees provides a window into how certain ancient populations comprehended their universe, a cosmos of flawless arrangement, where even the stars and celestial bodies follow trajectories established by God, where human liberty exists, but within a magnificent design already finished in heaven, a universe where time itself possesses significance, structure, and divine intention. Moses on Mount Sinai once more. The Book of Jubilees commences not with creation, but with Moses ascending Mount Sinai to obtain God's commandments. You might believe you're familiar with this account from Exodus. Yet Jubilees informs us something fresh occurred on that mountain. While Moses remained among the cloud-shrouded peaks, the angel of the presence arrived to him, bearing a responsibility: to inscribe what no human had previously heard. Pay attention to everything. I will communicate to you on this mountain, the angel instructs Moses, and inscribe it within a manuscript so that your descendants might understand I have not forsaken them. What comes next is not merely the commandments, but a retelling of all history, stretching from creation until that precise moment on the mountain. The angel clarifies that he is reading from the celestial records, God's cosmic documentation, where all occurrences past and future are inscribed. Through this angel, Moses discovers the genuine structure of time itself, not the disorganized lunar months that drift through the seasons, but God's flawless calendar of precisely 364 days. This divine calendar divides the year into 4 seasons of 91 days apiece, exactly 13 weeks for each season. Each year contains 52 complete weeks. Days consistently fall on the identical date every year. Festivals never move or shift. It is flawless, unchanging, and based on Jubilees, the sole calendar God acknowledges for indicating holy days. Observe the days and the months and the seasons. The angel directs Moses. If they alter this arrangement, they will disrupt their seasons, and the years will be displaced, and they will observe neither the festivals nor the Sabbaths at their correct time. Right here, we encounter one of Jubilees' most remarkable assertions, that utilizing the incorrect calendar is not simply a small mistake, but a cosmic transgression that disrupts divine arrangement. Those who adhere to lunar months or alternative human calendars sever their link with heaven's timing. Their prayers and festivals hold no significance, for they occur on the incorrect days. This might appear unusual to contemporary understanding, but for the writer of Jubilees, time itself represented a battleground. Jewish populations following the Babylonian displacement encountered pressure to embrace foreign methods of measuring time. The author probably perceived this as a danger to their very distinctiveness as God's population. By asserting a divine source for their solar calendar, they resisted these pressures. The angel clarifies to Moses that time itself commenced with creation, arranged in Jubilee intervals. 49-year periods constructed from 7 sabbatical cycles. Each occurrence in history falls within this meticulous structure. Human lives are similar to notes within a magnificent composition created by God before the universe commenced. But something more is transpiring on that mountain beyond simply a history instruction. The angel discloses to Moses that heaven and earth exist, locked in a cosmic battle. Powers of illumination and shadow struggle for human souls. Angels of heaven maintain vigilance over the righteous, while Mastema and his spirits entice humans to diverge from God's flawless arrangement. Inscribe all these words which I communicate to you today, the angel instructs Moses, for I understand their defiance and their obstinacy. The angel perceives ahead to errors when populations will disregard the genuine calendar, will intermingle with foreign peoples, will violate God's commandments. This manuscript is intended as a solution, a path returning to heaven's flawless arrangement. So Moses remains on the mountain for 40 days and nights, inscribing everything the angel conveys. The genuine account of the universe, the authentic commandments of God, the flawless timing of all things. And upon his descent, he transports not merely the stone tablets, but this manuscript as well. Jubilees, the documentation of time itself. Within this cosmic perspective, human liberty continues to exist, but within limits established long ago. We select our directions, yet the structure of history adheres to patterns inscribed in heaven before the initial day emerged. Time is not simply passing moments, but a holy structure, and existing in harmony with it signifies adhering to God's genuine calendar, disclosed once more through Moses on the mountain. Creation, reconstructed. In the beginning, God brought forth the heavens and the earth. Thus commences Genesis, with God alone summoning light from shadow. Yet Jubilees presents us with a different scene, a cosmos already populated with angels observing as God molds the universe. This is not a silent, empty emptiness. Heaven's assemblies are filled with observers to earth's beginning. The angel communicates to Moses, "On the initial day, God brought forth the heavens above, and the earth and the waters, and all the spirits who minister before him. The angels of the presence, the angels of holiness, the angels of the spirits of fire, the angels of the spirits of wind, the angels of the spirits of the clouds of shadow, of snow, of hail, of ice, the angels of sound and thunder and lightning, the angels of the spirits of cold and warmth." Creation develops across 6 days as Genesis communicates to us, yet with angels documenting each divine action, recording it in heaven's manuscripts. God is not simply constructing a universe. He is founding a cosmic arrangement with numerous levels, with positioning angels over each component of nature, establishing a heavenly administration to sustain his creation. On day 1, God brings into existence not merely light, but the angels themselves. Organized in rigid hierarchies and functions, some stand before God's throne offering praises, others function as couriers, still others supervise natural powers. Wind, precipitation, seasons, and celestial bodies. When the waters separate on day 2, angels are designated to monitor them. When land emerges on day 3, additional angels assume their stations. For each aspect of creation, heaven supplies overseers, protectors, and record keepers. Nothing transpires accidentally or without supervision. On the 4th day, when God fashions the sun, moon, and stars, Jubilees introduces something essential: the founding of God's flawless calendar. The sun's trajectory through the sky indicates not merely days, but a divine schedule. Precisely 364 days in length, this calendar turns into central to the manuscript's communication, a celestial clock that humans must adhere to. He fashioned the sun as a magnificent sign above the earth for days, Sabbaths, months, celebrations, years, jubilees, and for every season, the angel clarifies. Each unit of time possesses significance in God's intention. To disregard this calendar is to step beyond divine arrangement itself. Creatures emerge on days 5 and 6, precisely as Genesis communicates to us. Yet Jubilees adds that 22 varieties of creatures were fashioned, a number that corresponds with the letters in the Hebrew alphabet, implying that creation itself is organized like holy language. Then arrives humanity. Adam, molded from earth, provided life by God's breath, yet Jubilees presents us with the angel's reaction. Some celebrate at this fresh being, while others develop apprehension. These concerns foreshadow difficulties to arrive, as certain angels will ultimately harbor resentment toward humans and pursue their downfall. Eve's creation arrives with fresh particulars as well. The angel communicates to Moses she was not fashioned on the sixth day alongside Adam, but afterward, after Adam had been transported into Eden. This timing distinction might appear minor, but it influences how Jubilees perceives gender functions and human relationships. When God pauses on the seventh day, Jubilees emphasizes this was not merely a break, but the creation of something fresh. The Sabbath itself, the crown of the week. The angel communicates to Moses that only two groups receive permission to honor this day, the angels in heaven and the Israelites on earth. All remaining peoples were refused this privilege. In this retelling, Adam and Eve are not quite the autonomous beings we recognize from Genesis. They resemble more closely actors in a cosmic performance, observed by angels. Their selections documented in heaven's manuscripts, their future already inscribed in records above. They possess free will, yet they exercise it within limits established before they drew their initial breath. God positions the initial humans in Eden not merely to care for a garden, but to burn incense and present offerings, transforming Eden not merely into a paradise, but the initial temple. From their very first day, humans were meant to worship, to recognize the Creator and the arrangement He founded in those initial 6 days. By the time Jubilees completes its creation account, we perceive a universe more intricate than Genesis reveals to us, a cosmos layered with angels, governed by exact timing. Moving in accordance with patterns established at the beginning, humans stand at the center of this magnificent design, valuable to God, yet also small, within an enormous heavenly system that observes, documents, and occasionally intervenes in earthly matters. The downfall, as told by the angels. When we arrive at the account of temptation in Eden, Jubilees takes us further than Genesis does. The recognizable serpent emerges, but behind this creature stands a darker power, Mastema, Prince of Spirits, heaven's accuser. The angel clarifies to Moses that the serpent was simply a tool utilized by spiritual powers that resented Adam and Eve's position in creation. The serpent approached and drew near to the woman. The angel communicates to Moses. And the serpent questioned the woman, "Has God genuinely stated you shall not consume from any tree in the garden?" Yet, unlike Genesis, Jubilees presents us this was not simply curiosity or mischief. It represented part of a cosmic examination. Would humans remain devoted to heaven's arrangement? Eve's response adheres to the recognizable trajectory. Accepting the fruit, consuming it, sharing with Adam. Yet Jubilees perceives this as more than disobedience. It represents contamination. By accepting what was not provided, the initial humans violated the limits between sacred and ordinary things. Their nakedness, suddenly apparent to them, is not merely shame. It represents the forfeiture of glory. On that day their mouths were opened, and they commenced to communicate, the angel states, and they perceived that they were naked. This fresh awareness arrives as a descent from innocence, yet also as a kind of dark awakening. They now understand both good and evil, yet this understanding brings suffering instead of wisdom. God's arrival in the garden arrives with thunder and earthquake in Jubilees' account. Divine judgment is not silent, but frightening. The entire garden trembles as God declares his verdict, first upon the serpent, then upon Eve, then upon Adam. Each receives consequences suited to their function in this cosmic violation. What transpires next varies subtly from Genesis. God does not fashion garments of animal skins for the fallen humans. Rather, the angel communicates to Moses, "The Lord God fashioned for Adam and his wife garments of skin and clothed them." Certain ancient interpreters comprehended this to signify Adam and Eve initially wore garments of radiance, spiritual bodies, now substituted with mortal flesh that would someday perish. Their removal from Eden follows. Yet Jubilees adds a timeline absent from Genesis. In the initial week of the initial Jubilee, Adam and his wife existed in the Garden of Eden for 7 years, tilling and maintaining it. Thus, the initial humans spent precisely 7 years in paradise. 1 week of years before their downfall. As they depart Eden, Jubilees communicates to us, Adam transported 2 things: incense from the garden, so he could continue to present proper worship beyond paradise, and seeds of garden plants to cultivate food in his banishment. Both demonstrate that despite their downfall, humans preserve connections to their original intention, to worship God and to care for the earth. The angel clarifies to Moses that Adam and Eve did not merely forfeit a garden, they forfeited direct contact with holiness. Therefore, the records of heaven were directed regarding them that they should be separated from all defilement. Transgression generated a barrier between earth and heaven, between humans and divine presence. Beyond Eden, the outcasts commence to labor the land. Adam tills the soil, while Eve discovers how to fashion clothing. They acquire abilities they never required in paradise. Cultivation, weaving, cooking with flame. They produce children, first Cain with his sister Awan, then Abel with his sister Azura. Jubilees meticulously documents these particulars. Supplying gaps, Genesis leaves available. When Adam and Eve produce Seth to substitute murdered Abel, Jubilees dates this with precision after 5 weeks, in the 4th year of the 5th week of the initial Jubilee. This exact dating is not simply trivia. It represents central to the manuscript's communication. Each occurrence transpires at its designated moment, inscribed in heaven's documentation before the universe commenced. Time itself has transformed following Eden. Presently, humans exist within rigid measurements: days, weeks, months, years, and jubilees. The initial Jubilee, 49 years, indicates the transition from paradise to the universe of labor, suffering, and mortality. The cosmic clock has commenced ticking, counting through history toward ultimate judgment and restoration. The angel communicates to Moses that Adam and Eve mourned for their forfeited garden, presenting fragrant plants as gifts to God, pursuing forgiveness. And God does not forsake them. Even as they commence their banishment, divine mercy accompanies them. Angels instruct them in abilities they require to endure. The sun and stars continue to adhere to heaven's schedule, providing them the rhythm of days and seasons. Thus commences human history beyond Eden, a narrative of forfeiture, yet also of structure and intention. The universe continues to operate on divine time. Angels continue to observe and document human actions. And though paradise is forfeited, Jubilees communicates to us the path returning remains accessible to those who respect heaven's calendar and adhere to God's everlasting commandments. Cain, Abel, and the initial civil conflict. Following Eden, existence continued. Adam and Eve produced children, and the human narrative commenced to develop. The Book of Jubilees communicates to us that in the initial week of the second Jubilee, a son named Cain was brought into the world. His brother Abel arrived 7 years afterward. The brothers matured, discovering the methods of the earth. Abel cared for sheep, while Cain labored the soil. They existed in rhythm with the land, yet peace would not endure between them. When the moment arrived to present offerings to God, Abel transported the firstborn of his flock. Cain assembled fruits from his harvest. The smoke from Abel's sacrifice ascended directly to heaven. Cain's offering drifted sideways, turned away. Jubilees provides us timing that Genesis omits. The brothers were adults. Cain was 22 and Abel 20. The initial murder was not a sudden explosion of anger, but a festering wound. "Let us walk in the field," Cain stated to his brother. Away from observant eyes, Cain struck Abel down. Blood soaked into the ground that had recently refused Cain's offering. The earth turned into both observer and proof. God's voice shattered the silence. "Where is Abel, your brother?" "Am I my brother's protector?" Cain responded. Yet God understood. The blood had already communicated from the ground. Unlike Genesis, Jubilees follows Cain's consequence with meticulous dates. His banishment commenced that identical year. The timing documented in heaven's record. God marked Cain so nobody would eliminate him, a mixture of curse and peculiar protection. East of Eden, Cain constructed the initial city. He identified it after his son Enoch, not the Skywalker we will encounter later, but a different Enoch. This city construction possesses dark significance in Jubilees. It was not merely shelter, but the initial indication of humans fashioning their own kingdoms separate from heaven's intention. 4 generations down from Cain arrived Lamech, who eliminated a man and a boy. Evil expanded like a weed in fertile soil. The bloodshed that commenced with brothers extended into the initial clans and tribes, the initial civil conflict of humanity. Back in Adam's household, a fresh son was brought into the world. Seth, through him, would arrive a different lineage, one that might recall heaven's calendar. Yet the harm was accomplished. Death had entered the universe, and time's arrow presently pointed toward deterioration. Jubilees presents us that Cain's crime was not merely murder, it represented the initial violation in God's flawless timeline. From this point onward, earthly occurrences would struggle to correspond with heaven's script. The magnificent clock commenced to drift. Adam and Eve grieved Abel for 4 Jubilees, nearly 200 years. Time itself turned into a measurement of sorrow, and in their tears we perceive the initial humans discovering that actions resonate across generations. The ground that absorbed Abel's blood would never produce the identical harvest once more. The initial city constructed by Cain would never experience genuine peace. The pattern was established. Brother opposing brother. The soil and the shepherd in conflict. In Jubilees, this is not simply family conflict. It represents cosmic disruption. The angels observing from above documented each date, each transgression, each result. Nothing was accidental. Everything suited into heaven's schedule, even the initial murder. And thus commenced humanity's extended journey away from Eden, a trajectory indicated by violence, yet still under heaven's vigilant observation. The calendar maintained turning. The Jubilees counted forward. The angels documented it all. Enoch, the Skywalker. In the 7th generation from Adam arrived a man unlike any other. His identity was Enoch. And Jubilees recounts his narrative with particular attention. Brought into the world in the 6th week of the 7th Jubilee, Enoch's existence was charted by holy numbers from the beginning. Genesis provides Enoch merely a few sentences. Jubilees expands his narrative into something magnificent. He was not simply a virtuous man who walked with God. He represented the initial human to decipher heaven's code. At age 12, Enoch commenced to revere God. By 65, he had discovered the rhythms of sun, moon, and stars. The angels themselves instructed him to follow time's pulse across the sky. He was not merely observing the heavens. He was interpreting them like writing. Jubilees discloses what Genesis only suggests. Enoch represented the initial astronomer-priest. 6 Jubilees following creation, humans ultimately possessed someone who could interpret God's celestial calendar accurately. The stars rotated overhead, and Enoch understood their identities. The seasons transformed, and he indicated their proper moments. He was the initial among men to discover writing and understanding and wisdom. Jubilees communicates to us. Before him, time moved without human observer. Following him, the days possessed a keeper. For 300 years, Enoch walked among his population, instructing them heaven's patterns. He inscribed it all. the initial holy manuscripts. His scrolls followed angels, demons, celestial bodies, and divine commandments. He turned into a bridge between realms. The Book of Jubilees provides us something Genesis does not, the explanation for Enoch's particular function. He stood opposing fallen angels who had instructed humans' prohibited understanding. While others discovered warfare and vanity, Enoch instructed truth and time. In his 365th year, corresponding with the days of the solar year, Enoch did not perish. He was transported. Jubilees states the earth released him to the sky he had examined so devotedly. He had walked with angels in comprehension, and presently he would walk with them in person. Jubilees communicates to us the angels transported Enoch to the Garden of Eden, where he presently documents the actions of humanity. He turned into heaven's scribe, documenting each transgression and virtue. The man who followed time turned into timeless himself. Before he departed earth, Enoch cautioned his son Methuselah regarding approaching judgment. The waters would ascend, the universe would cleanse, a fresh beginning would arrive. Even this deluge possessed its designated moment in heaven's record. In Enoch, we perceive Jubilees' perfect human, one who maintains the correct calendar, adheres to heaven's commandments, and functions as observer to divine arrangement. He is simultaneously scientist and mystic, following stars while communicating with angels. What causes Jubilees' depiction of Enoch so remarkable is not merely his celestial ascent. It is that he dominated time itself. In a manuscript obsessed with exact dates and holy periods, Enoch stands as the human who achieved it correctly. He synchronized Earth's rhythms with heaven's pulse. Through Enoch, humans obtained the genuine calendar, 364 days, separated flawlessly, not the disorganized lunar months that drift and require correction, not the pagan timekeeping that functioned for false gods. The pure solar year separated in 4 equal portions. And because he maintained genuine time, Enoch escaped time's greatest curse, death. He stepped from the flowing river of days into the timeless realm where angels dwell. The Skywalker turned into the sky, resident. Following Enoch's departure, his understanding commenced to disappear from Earth. Populations disregarded the genuine calendar. They missed festival dates. They planted at incorrect moments. The gap between heaven and earth expanded wider with each passing Jubilee. Yet, Enoch observes still, based on Jubilees. From Eden's garden, he documents our narrative. The initial timekeeper maintains time for us all. The deluge is approaching. 10 generations from Adam, the universe had forfeited its direction. Jubilees communicates to us that by Noah's era, the earth commenced to be saturated with corruption and wickedness. The meticulous timeline God had established was presently in disorder. Unlike Genesis, Jubilees clarifies precisely why the deluge arrived. Yes, humans had expanded wicked, yet something worse had transpired. Angels referred to as watchers had abandoned their stations in heaven and accepted human wives. Their offspring were giants who consumed the sons of men. These fallen angels instructed humans arts that heaven had not intended to share yet. Metalwork, cosmetics, incantations, star interpretation for incorrect intentions. Understanding arrived too early, without wisdom to direct it. The divine schedule was shattered. Noah stood alone in this shattered universe. Jubilees refers to him as righteous in all his methods, a rare illumination in expanding shadow. When he was 500 years old, precisely when heaven's records had inscribed it, God communicated to him regarding the approaching waters. Jubilees adds a disturbing particular absent from Genesis. While Noah constructed the ark, demons, commanded by Mastema, Jubilees' identification for Satan, labored harder than ever to corrupt humanity. They understood their time was limited. The earth would shortly be cleansed of their influence. The ark was not merely a vessel, it represented a floating temple, constructed to heaven's exact measurements. 3 floors, exact dimensions, a single door, nothing accidental. Each cubit corresponded with the divine blueprint. In a universe where everything had gone incorrect, the ark stood as something precisely correct. Noah assembled creatures by sevens and pairs, depending on whether they were clean for sacrifice. Jubilees is meticulous to document which ones could be consumed and which could not. Even in crisis, the dietary commandments mattered. God's arrangement applied in all situations. On the 17th day of the 2nd month, in the 600th year of Noah's existence, the waters arrived. Rain from above, floods from beneath, heaven and earth conspired to cleanse away corruption. For 40 days, water covered everything. Jubilees follows the deluge's timeline with precision that Genesis does not match. The waters ascended for 40 days. They remained at their height for 150 days. They commenced to lower on the initial day of the 10th month. The tops of mountains emerged on the initial month of Noah's 601st year. This is not merely storytelling particular for Jubilees. These dates matter profoundly. The deluge was not accidental punishment. It represented scheduled cleansing, indicated on heaven's calendar long before the initial raindrop descended. Inside the ark, a remnant of existence waited. 8 humans, pairs of creatures, seeds and plants, not selected by accident, but chosen as living containers of renewal. When everything corrupt was eliminated, they would reconstruct the universe. Following precisely 1 year, Noah opened the ark. The ground had dried, a fresh universe waited, yet something had transformed in heaven as well. Jubilees communicates to us that following the deluge, the majority of the fallen angels were confined in judgment. Their commander, Mastema, pleaded God to maintain some demons free, and peculiarly, God consented. "Permit 1/10 of them to remain before me," God stated in Jubilees, "and permit 9/10 to descend to the location of judgment." Evil would persist, yet limited, contained on a divine restraint. Noah stepped onto clean earth and constructed an altar. He accepted clean creatures and birds and presented sacrifice. The smoke ascended to heaven, acknowledged. Unlike Cain's offering generations before, God established a covenant with Noah, promising never once more to obliterate the earth with water. Yet Jubilees adds something essential. God also restored the genuine calendar that had been forfeited since Enoch's era. 364 days, separated flawlessly into weeks and seasons. The universe commenced once more, cleansed, yet not flawless. And time resumed its march, presently with the rainbow as an indicator of God's patience. The deluge had arrived precisely when heaven ordained it. The next judgment would arrive on schedule as well. Noah's aftermath and the curse of Canaan. The waters withdrew. Existence commenced once more. Noah's initial action on dry ground was constructing an altar to express gratitude to God. His second was planting a vineyard. Jubilees communicates to us the timing of these occurrences with attention. The 27th day of the 2nd month, 1 year and 10 days following the deluge commenced. The vine expanded rapidly in soil enriched by the deluge. Noah harvested grapes and fashioned wine, not understanding its complete power. He consumed and fell unconscious, naked in his tent. What transpires next is one of Scripture's most peculiar accounts. Ham, Noah's middle son, perceived his father's nakedness and communicated to his brothers outside. Shem and Japheth walked backward into the tent, transporting a garment between them. They covered their father without looking at him. When Noah awoke and discovered what transpired, he cursed not Ham, but Ham's son, Canaan. Why curse the grandson instead of the son? Genesis does not clarify. Jubilees does. In this expanded account, we discover that Ham did not simply perceive Noah naked, He failed to respect the holy boundary between father and son. This was not merely embarrassment, it represented a violation of sacred arrangement. Jubilees adds that Noah had separated the earth between his 3 sons before this incident. When Ham demonstrated disrespect, Noah did not alter the land separation, yet he did curse Canaan to servitude. The timing matters. The land was already provided. The relationships were presently shattered. "Cursed be Canaan," Noah stated. "A servant of servants shall he be to his brothers." With these words, Noah established a pattern that would resonate through centuries. The descendants of Canaan would function for the descendants of Shem and Japheth. Jubilees follows the expansion of Noah's family with geographic precision. Shem accepted the middle of the earth, including what would turn into Israel. Ham accepted the hot south. Japheth obtained the cool northern territories. Each son swore an oath to respect these limits. Yet oaths become shattered. Jubilees communicates to us that Canaan looked at Lebanon and Jordan and decided to accept it, though it belonged to Shem. "Cursed be Canaan," the manuscript repeats, "for he settled in the land that was not his." This matters profoundly for Jubilees' original interpreters. The manuscript was probably inscribed when Jews encountered dangers from surrounding peoples. By recounting this expanded narrative of Canaan's curse, Jubilees is not merely clarifying ancient history. It is asserting that the adversaries of Israel are residing on stolen land. Opposing divine decree. Noah existed 350 years following the deluge, completing 950 years of existence. Jubilees documents that he was flawless in all his conduct, maintaining God's directives devotedly. In 19 Jubilees and 2 weeks and 5 years, the exact count matters. Noah perished. Before his death, Noah cautioned his sons regarding corruption. Jubilees adds a particular. Genesis lacks. Noah particularly cautioned against consuming blood and intermixing different varieties of creatures, plants, or clothing. Maintaining boundaries clear represented holy responsibility. Noah's sons constructed cities and commenced peoples. Children were brought into the world. The universe filled once more. 10 generations had passed from Adam to Noah. Presently a fresh count would commence. The clock maintained ticking toward Abraham, Moses, and beyond. What causes Jubilees' account of Noah so remarkable is not merely the deluge narrative, it is how flawlessly everything suits into heaven's schedule. The deluge arrived right on schedule. Noah's existence spanned precisely 19 Jubilees, and some weeks, nothing was accidental. Everything was counted. And in this meticulous counting, we perceive Jubilees' communication. Even catastrophe functions God's timing. Even curses complete heaven's intention. The angels maintain observing. The records maintain documenting. Time maintains flowing toward its designated conclusion. The Tower of Babel and the magnificent separation. 3 generations following Noah, humanity assembled in the land of Shinar, with one language and one intention. "Come," they stated, "let us construct a city and a tower whose top might extend to heaven." Their ambitions stretched toward the sky itself. Jubilees perceives this tower construction as more than simply pride. It represented an attempt to escape another deluge. Instead of trusting God's rainbow promise, they pursued safety in their own creation. They constructed with baked brick and bitumen, materials that water could not easily cleanse away. God descended to perceive this human project. Finding one population with one language constructing toward heaven, God decided to act, not in anger, as later interpretations frequently imply, but in cosmic reorganization. The moment had arrived for humanity to extend across the earth as intended. Jubilees provides us exact timing for these occurrences. In the beginning of the 34th Jubilee, the languages were confused. The single human family fractured into 70 peoples. corresponding with the 70 angels God had designated over the populations. This was not accidental separation. Jubilees communicates to us that lots were thrown for each people. To each angel went a population and a language. To each population went a territory with clear limits. Heaven's arrangement imposed itself on human disorder. Yet one angel obtained no earthly people. The Most High himself turned into the ruler of a 70. First portion, the descendants of Shem through Arpachshad, from whom would arrive Abraham. God maintained one bloodline under direct direction. Work on the tower halted. The city that would afterward be referred to as Babel was forsaken, half-constructed. The populations scattered like leaves descending from their vine. East and west, north and south they went, each group presently communicating words the others could not comprehend. Here, Jubilees adds an essential particular absent from Genesis. Following the languages were confused. The majority of angels guided their designated peoples away from genuine worship. They instructed their populations to fashion idols, present incorrect sacrifices, and adhere to false calendars. The 70 angels turned into 70 tempters. Only the portion God maintained for himself recalled the correct methods, at least for a time. Only they preserved the genuine calendar of 364 days. Only they remembered the proper festivals and Sabbaths. The remainder descended into error and ignorance. Nimrod, great-grandson of Noah, constructed the initial kingdom following the confusion. Jubilees depicts him not as a mighty hunter before the Lord, but as the initial human to battle, opposing heaven's intention. He constructed cities and walls. He instructed warfare. He generated borders that did not correspond with God's separation. The once united human family presently existed separated existences. Cousin could not communicate to cousin. Brother battled opposing brother. Each group asserted their territory and disregarded their common source. The angels designated to each people guided the majority of them into deepening shadow. Within this fractured universe, genuine understanding disappeared. The calendar Enoch had instructed, that Noah had preserved through the deluge, was presently maintained by only a few. The majority of peoples adhered to lunar months or star patterns that did not synchronize with heaven's count. 349 years following the deluge, in the initial year of the second week of the 10th Jubilee, a child was brought into the world in Ur of the Chaldeans. His identity was Abram, afterward Abraham. Through him, God would commence assembling a population who might recall heaven's timing. The Tower of Babel stands in Jubilees as the moment humanity attempted to extend to heaven on their own terms, utilizing their own measurements. They desired to contact the sky without adhering to the path God had established. They pursued unity without divine center. The confusion of languages was not merely punishment, it represented protection. If all humanity had persisted as one, communicating one language, constructing one city, their corruption would have understood no boundaries. Separated, their evil remained local, contained, and thus the magnificent separation transpired. Right on heaven's schedule, 70 peoples under 70 angels, 70 languages, 70 territories, and one portion maintained apart, through whom all peoples might someday discover blessing once more. The clock maintained ticking. The Jubilees counted forward. The stage was established for Abraham to enter the narrative and obtain the covenant that would transform everything. Abraham, the timekeeper's selected one. In the silent village of Ur, a young boy identified as Abraham observed his father, Terah, create idols from clay and wood. Unlike others in his household, Abraham experienced a profound pull towards something greater than these lifeless figures. The stars communicated to him of arrangement and design, not accidental lights, but a cosmic communication. One night, As Terah slept, Abraham accepted a wooden hammer and shattered the idols his father had fashioned. He departed only the largest one standing, positioning the hammer in its hand. When Terah discovered the shattered figures, he demanded explanations. "The big idol shattered them," Abraham responded with silent certainty. "Can you not perceive the hammer in his hand?" "Do not be foolish," his father responded sharply. "These are merely objects I fashioned. They possess no power." "Then why do you worship what your own hands have molded?" Abraham questioned. In that moment, something shifted inside him. The Book of Jubilees communicates to us this was not simply a child's prank. It represented the initial step in a voyage that would reconstruct human history. Unlike the brief account in Genesis, Jubilees depicts Abraham as a cosmic revolutionary. At age 14, he commenced to examine the stars, not merely as lights, but as indicators of time. While others adhered to moon phases, Abraham discovered the genuine solar year, 364 days, separated into 4 seasons of precisely 13 weeks apiece. "I will not adhere to the path of falsehoods," Abraham announced to his family. The young man turned away from idol worship and toward the God who had established the stars in their trajectories. This was not merely spiritual awakening, it represented cosmic synchronization. When famine struck the land, Abraham's family relocated to Haran. There, the young man expanded into a teacher. He constructed a particular tower where he followed the sun's movement, demonstrating anyone who would listen how the genuine calendar functioned. Many ridiculed, yet some listened. The angel conveying to Moses clarifies that God observed Abraham closely during these years. Unlike others, Abraham did not merely notice the patterns in creation. He traced them, returning to their source. He recognized that time itself represented a gift, a tool, and an examination. One night, as Abraham slept under the desert sky, a voice summoned to him, "Depart your father's household and journey to a land I will present you." This was not merely a directive to travel, it represented an invitation to step into a fresh timeline, one synchronized with heaven's design. The voyage was lengthy and indicated with trials. Jubilees communicates to us that at each milestone, Abraham constructed altars, not merely as actions of worship, but as indicators of cosmic significance. Each stone positioning transpired on particular dates, feast days inscribed in the celestial records long before humans walked the earth. When Abraham extended to Canaan, he did not merely assert territory. Based on Jubilees, he was reclaiming space that had been divinely allocated to Shem's descendants, yet wrongfully seized by Canaan's children. This was not simple tribal conflict. It represented cosmic realignment, positioning things returning in their proper arrangement. As Abraham walked the length and breadth of this fresh land, he was not merely exploring, he was tracing the limits of a divine contract. Each step descended on a timeline established before creation. Each movement, exactly choreographed by the same hand that positioned the stars. The conflict of the kings. The dust ascended in thick clouds as 4 powerful kings marched their armies toward Sodom. They had already crushed 5 other cities, departing only ash and tears in their path. Among their captives was Lot, Abraham's nephew, dragged away with all he possessed. When a lone survivor transported news to Abraham, the old shepherd did not hesitate. Although Genesis recounts this narrative briefly, Jubilees expands the account, presenting us Abraham not as a reluctant warrior, but as heaven's selected champion. He assembled 318 trained men. A number Jubilees documents is tied to celestial patterns and moved with surprising velocity. Under the cover of night, Abraham divided his small band into groups. They descended upon the king's camps like a desert storm, sudden, fierce, and overwhelming. The Book of Jubilees communicates to us this was not merely military strategy, but divine timing. Each attack transpired at the exact hour predetermined in heaven's documentation. As dawn emerged, the mighty armies that had terrorized the plain existed scattered. Abraham had not only rescued Lot, but had captured vast treasures. Based on Jubilees, this victory transpired on the exact anniversary of Noah's landing following the deluge, a date when divine justice typically manifests in the universe. On Abraham's return voyage, a mysterious figure emerged on the road. Melchizedek, king of Salem and priest of God Most High. Unlike Genesis, which mentions this encounter briefly, Jubilees presents Melchizedek as more than human, perhaps one of the angels designated to observe over the holy timeline. Abraham bowed before Melchizedek, presenting 1/10 of all he had accepted. This was not merely generous providing, it represented cosmic acknowledgement. By this action, Abraham recognized that his victory belonged to a larger pattern, one inscribed in the stars before his birth. Melchizedek blessed Abraham with bread and wine, symbols whose significance Jubilees connects to future feasts. Each component carried significance tied to the solar calendar. Bread representing the harvest festivals, wine symbolizing celebrations, Montine, proper seasons. The encounter endured exactly 1 day, from sunset to sunset, a flawless Sabbath observance, though the commandments had not yet been provided to Moses. Based on Jubilees, this was not coincidence, but evidence that genuine worship adheres to heaven's schedule, not human invention. When the king of Sodom presented Abraham wealth as reward, the patriarch refused with words that resonate across time. "I will accept nothing, not even a thread." Jubilees clarifies this was not merely noble character, but holy wisdom. Abraham comprehended that accepting payment would bind him to human timelines instead of divine ones. As Abraham voyaged home, stars blazed overhead in patterns only he could completely interpret. The Book of Jubilees communicates to us each constellation confirmed to him that history develops not by accident, but by design, with each occurrence transpiring at its designated moment. Circumcision, covenant, and cosmic territory. The night air experienced heavy with promise, as Abraham stood beneath a sky crowded with stars. "Look upward," the voice stated. "Count them if you are able." Abraham's eyes traced the recognizable patterns, the identical stars he had examined since youth, presently framed as his family's future. Based on Jubilees, this covenant moment did not transpire on merely any night. It descended exactly 50 years, a complete Jubilee. From the day Abraham had initially rejected idol worship, heaven's clockwork rotated with flawless precision. While Genesis describes this covenant briefly, Jubilees expands the scene dramatically. The manuscript communicates to us Abraham descended into a profound sleep, yet this was not ordinary rest. His spirit ascended to observe the celestial records, where all of time, past, present, and future, existed inscribed in illumination. There, Abraham perceived how the land would be separated, not by human selection, but by divine decree. Each tribe's territory had been charted before creation, each boundary drawn by the identical finger that traced the trajectories of stars. This was not merely real estate, it represented cosmic geography. The next morning, Abraham awoke, transformed. The vision continued to burn in his mind as a voice instructed him, "This is my covenant with you. The flesh of your foreskin must be cut away." Unlike Genesis, which presents circumcision simply as a sign, Jubilees clarifies it as a physical synchronization with celestial patterns, the body modified to correspond with heaven's design. Abraham did not hesitate. At 99 years old, he accepted a knife and completed the covenant demand. Based on Jubilees, he executed this action during the exact hour when the sun extends to its highest point during the spring feast. Another cosmic synchronization. As Abraham's household adhered to his example, every male from 8 days old to servants bought with silver, the angel Mastema emerged before God's throne. "This man expands too powerful," the accuser argued. "Examine him further." Jubilees alone communicates to us of this celestial dispute, disclosing that Abraham's trials were not accidental hardships, but cosmic contests. When Abraham recovered from his circumcision, 3 figures emerged at his tent. While Genesis refers to them as men, Jubilees identifies them clearly as angels, heaven's ambassadors, executing a scheduled visit, on a day indicated in celestial documentation long before Abraham's birth. As Sarah laughed at the promise of a son, Jubilees communicates to us the sound resonated in celestial halls, documented as the origin of Isaac's identity, centuries before the child's birth. Even human emotions fulfilled functions in the cosmic script. Following the messengers departed toward Sodom, Abraham stood before his tent. The stars that had once appeared distant presently experienced like family, points of illumination connected to his bloodline by unbreakable oath. Based on Jubilees, Abraham had turned into more than a man. He was presently a living timepiece, his heartbeat synchronized with heaven's rhythm. Isaac's almost sacrifice. Dawn painted the eastern sky as Abraham saddled his donkey. The wood existed strapped to the animal's back, and the firepot glowed with hot coals. At his side walked Isaac, presently a young man, strong enough to transport the heavy load, yet still innocent enough to trust his father completely. While Genesis recounts this narrative in sparse particular, Jubilees supplies the gaps with rich significance. The voyage to Moriah did not transpire on merely any day. It descended exactly on the date that would centuries afterward turn into the Day of Atonement. The timing was not accident, but meticulous design. For 3 days, father and son walked in near silence. Based on Jubilees, they crossed rivers whose identities corresponded with those flowing from Eden. They ascended hills whose forms resonated mountains where angels assembled. Each step adhered to a trajectory charted in heaven's documentation. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked upward and perceived the location God had selected. Unlike the Genesis account, Jubilees communicates to us Abraham recognized it immediately, not from any sign, but from profound memory. This represented the identical spot where Adam had initially presented sacrifice, where Noah had constructed an altar following the deluge. "The wood is here and the fire," Isaac stated, "but where is the lamb?" Abraham's reply arrived softly. "God himself will supply the lamb, my son." In Genesis, these words appear like gentle deception, yet Jubilees discloses them as prophecy. Abraham had perceived the future during his covenant vision and understood precisely what would develop. When they extended to the summit, Abraham constructed the altar with meticulous precision. Each stone was positioned in accordance with patterns presented to him in dreams, not accidental rocks, but a cosmic chart, Isaac observed. Comprehending more than the Genesis manuscript implies. "Father," Isaac stated, "bind me well so I do not struggle and make your sacrifice flawed." Based on Jubilees, Isaac was not a frightened victim, but a willing participant, having been informed of his function in the cosmic performance. At 25 years old, he could have easily overpowered his elderly father, yet selected submission instead. As Abraham raised the knife, heaven itself appeared to hold its breath. Yet then, a voice summoned, halting his hand. An angel, not merely any messenger, but the identical one who had indicated the covenant, emerged with a ram caught in nearby bushes. While Genesis describes this as an examination of faith, Jubilees frames it as something more, a cosmic rehearsal. This hillside performance mirrored occurrences intended for the distant future, when other fathers would encounter the forfeiture of firstborn sons. On this identical date, following the sacrifice, Abraham and Isaac descended the mountain, transformed. Based on Jubilees, they returned home on the exact date that would afterward turn into Passover, when death would once more pass over the devoted. The timing completed patterns founded before creation, when the celestial records were initially inscribed. Rebekah, Jacob, and the angelic inheritance. The old servant's caravan approached the well as young women assembled with their water jars. Abraham had dispatched him on a holy mission. Locate a wife for Isaac from their own population, not from Canaan's daughters. Based on Jubilees, this was not simple tribal preference, but cosmic necessity. When Rebekah emerged, the servant understood immediately. Unlike Genesis, which describes an examination involving water, Jubilees communicates to us the servant recognized her because she corresponded with the exact description provided to Abraham by angels years before. Her face, her walk, even the sound of her voice had been foretold. Rebekah's voyage to Isaac adhered to a trajectory indicated by divine timing. She arrived at his tent on the anniversary of Sarah's death, a date Jubilees identifies as significant in heaven's documentation. Their encounter was not accidental occurrence, but flawless orchestration. For 20 years, Rebekah's womb remained closed. While Genesis mentions this briefly, Jubilees clarifies it as deliberate timing. The twins required to be brought into the world in a particular year, synchronized with celestial cycles. Even human fertility adhered to heaven's schedule. When Rebekah at last became pregnant, the turmoil within her body went beyond mere physical struggle. The Book of Jubilees tells us that two separate destinies wrestled for dominance inside her womb. This wasn't simply about two siblings, but rather two divergent paths that human history might follow. Every movement, every kick she felt, signified cosmic powers doing battle. "Why must I endure this?" Rebekah questioned, placing her palms against her distended abdomen. She sought understanding, and while Genesis leaves the location unnamed, Jubilees provides the missing detail, explaining that she went to Melchizedek, who remained living and continued his work as keeper of heaven's records. "Two peoples struggle within your body," the priest informed her, "and the elder child will serve the younger one." These words carried weight beyond mere consolation. They were a cosmic pronouncement. Jubilees reveals that this prophecy came directly from the heavenly tablets, unchanged from before the foundation of the world. At birth, the twins displayed stark contrasts. Esau came first, covered in red hair, seizing life with fierce determination. Jacob emerged behind him, his fingers wrapped around his brother's heel. Genesis records this as noteworthy detail, but Jubilees perceives deeper symbolism at work. One infant rushing forward, ahead of divine intention, the other carefully maintaining heaven's designated rhythm. As childhood passed, their differences grew more pronounced. Esau pursued the life of a hunter, chasing prey through untamed wilderness. Jacob remained close to home, absorbing ancient traditions and learning the sacred calendar. Jubilees presents this not as simple personality variation, but as spiritual orientation. Esau moved according to human desire. Jacob synchronized himself with divine tempo. The day Jacob cooked his stew, Jubilees informs us, wasn't chosen randomly. That red lentil soup simmered on the precise anniversary of Abraham's covenant vision. The aroma filled the air just as Esau returned, exhausted from his hunting expedition. "Let me have some of that red food," Esau insisted. "I'm completely famished." "Transfer your birthright to me first," Jacob replied. Genesis portrays this as opportunism, but Jubilees uncovers Jacob's true understanding. He recognized that the birthright already belonged to him according to heaven's design. He wasn't taking something wrongfully, but reclaiming what cosmic law had already designated as his. Years later, When Isaac's vision failed in old age, Rebekah recalled the angel's message from before her sons were born. Jubilees explains that she didn't devise the deception that secured Jacob's blessing on her own. She followed precise instructions delivered to her through dreams, where angels revealed exactly how to align events with heaven's blueprint. As Jacob stood before his father, wearing Esau's garments and receiving the blessing, Jubilees tells us angels observed with satisfaction. This represented not trickery, but cosmic realignment, placing the proper son in the proper position at the proper moment, synchronizing earthly reality with heaven's timeline. Esau's fury, upon learning of the deception, nearly destroyed the family. Yet Jubilees explains that even this rage fulfilled a greater design. It compelled Jacob to flee, launching him on a transformative journey that would reshape not merely one individual, but an entire nation, precisely according to heaven's flawless schedule. Jacob's ladder and the visitation of angels. The night descended cold and silent as Jacob rested his head upon stone. Running from his brother's wrath, he found himself isolated between two worlds. No longer sheltered in his father's dwelling, not yet arrived in Laban's territory. He couldn't have known that this desolate place would become a bridge connecting heaven and earth. Sleep overtook him, bringing with it a vision beyond comparison. An enormous ladder extended from the dust beneath his feet, upward into clouds beyond visibility. This dream wasn't about escape, but rather a glimpse into the cosmic structure that Jubilees describes so meticulously. Along this shining stairway angels traveled, not random couriers, but the organized ranks of heaven. They traversed a boundary that humans rarely witness, passing between realms normally kept separate. Ascending and descending they went, transporting reports, executing judgments, preserving the divine structure that Jubilees insists governs everything. What makes this vision particularly significant in Jubilees is its function as a border crossing. Jacob has stumbled upon a thin place, a location where heaven makes contact with earth. Unlike Genesis, which keeps the vision concise, Jubilees expands it into a complete celestial encounter. God addresses Jacob from atop the ladder, renewing the covenant first established with Abraham. The land beneath the sleeping man would someday pass to his innumerable offspring. Entire nations would bow before his descendants. But Jubilees contribute something essential, a timeline. This isn't merely an undefined future promise, but a scheduled event marked on heaven's calendar. When Jacob awakens, trembling with reverence, he doesn't simply name the location Bethel, as Genesis recounts. In Jubilees, he conducts a full ceremony, marking the exact date and hour of this meeting. He anoints with oil, makes solemn vows, and institutes the first tithe, dedicating 1/10 of everything he possesses back to God. Jacob becomes a timekeeper, following in his grandfather Abraham's footsteps. But while Jacob establishes this sacred site, sinister forces conspire against him. Mastema, heaven's prosecutor, observes with increasing alarm. This divine promise endangers his influence among the nations. In Jubilees, we discover that Mastema attempted to claim authority over Gentile territories after Babel's scattering. Now, Jacob's blessing challenges that claim. The text hints at invisible warfare. Angels protect Jacob's path toward Laban, defending against dark spirits who would mislead him. Each step of his travels unfolds exactly according to heaven's timetable. Not one instant too early, not one day delayed. At the center of this narrative stands Jubilee's most cherished theme. Nothing throughout human history occurs by accident. The ladder isn't merely beautiful imagery, but evidence of continuous divine management. Angels don't simply deliver messages. They enforce cosmic law, monitor human conduct, and relay every detail back to God. Jacob's dream identifies him as the next connection in a divine plan spanning countless generations. The place where he sleeps will eventually host a temple. The God who speaks from the ladder's summit will establish covenants with his descendants, and the angels climbing upward and downward will persist in their endless work, maintaining time, recording days, and guaranteeing that heaven's intention becomes earth's reality. Bethel transforms from merely a worship site into a timestamp within the grand chronicle of creation. Dina and the blood covenant. The account of Dina varies dramatically in the Book of Jubilees from what you might recall in Genesis. Where the Bible presents a tragic narrative of violation and vengeance, Jubilees reshapes it into something altogether different, a vindication of tribal purity and divine justice. The narrative begins straightforwardly enough. Jacob's daughter Dina goes to visit the women of Shechem, a neighboring settlement. There, the prince notices her, desires her, and takes her. What follows in Genesis appears as a sorrowful tale of human passion and retribution, but Jubilees reconstructs this account into a cosmic drama concerning the preservation of pure bloodlines and the fulfillment of heaven's decrees. In Genesis, Jacob's sons deceive the men of Shechem into undergoing circumcision, then attack while they're recovering. It presents as a disturbing story of deception and disproportionate violence. But Jubilees portrays their actions as righteous, even sacred. The text declares firmly, "For this action they receive inscription for blessing in the heavenly tablets." Why such commendation for what appears to be a brutal slaughter? Because Jubilees views intermarriage as grievous transgression against cosmic structure. The book asserts that long before this incident, Noah had partitioned the world among his sons, allocating each to their designated region. The people of Shechem belonged to Shem's portion, but Canaan, previously cursed, had wrongfully occupied that territory. Their very presence violated heaven's boundaries. Dina's brothers function as instruments of divine justice, not merely vengeful relatives. Their violence restores a boundary that should never have been breached. Furthermore, Jubilees specifies the exact date of this event. The timing itself holds significance, aligning with heavenly patterns established at creation. The angel narrating to Moses clarifies that this bloodshed serves as warning for all Israel's future. Anyone who marries beyond the chosen lineage faces divine punishment. The brothers didn't react excessively. They fulfilled an eternal law inscribed before time's beginning. Simeon and Levi, frequently criticized in other Jewish writings, receive particular praise in Jubilees. Their names get recorded for blessing in the heavenly tablets, those same cosmic ledgers that track every moral decision, every birth and death, every observance or violation of divine law. Even Jacob's initial anger toward his sons gets reinterpreted. His fear of retaliation from surrounding tribes becomes needless anxiety. Heaven itself protects them following their righteous deed. Angels prevent any revenge against Jacob's household, keeping them secure as they journey away from Shechem. Blood purity becomes fundamental to Jubilees' message here. The mixing of chosen and unchosen lineage threatens the entire divine design. Jacob's line must remain isolated, untainted by outside influence. The heavenly tablets demand it, the angels enforce it, and the patriarchs must uphold it. What Genesis presents as a complicated human tragedy, Jubilees converts into a straightforward morality lesson about maintaining boundaries strictly in place. Time, space, blood, and law all converge in this moment of violence. For those reading Jubilees, Dina's story isn't about victimhood or revenge, but about preserving the cosmic order that governs all existence. The blood spilled at Shechem inscribes another entry in heaven's eternal record. Joseph sold. Timeline preserved. The story of Joseph represents one of the Bible's most treasured narratives, a younger brother sold by envious siblings, only to ascend from slavery to greatness. But in Jubilees, this familiar account assumes new meaning, becoming further proof that heaven's schedule cannot be disrupted, even by human cruelty. Joseph's narrative begins as it does in Genesis. The favored son receives a distinctive coat from his father. He dreams of future prominence. His brothers grow resentful. But Jubilees adds essential details about timing that Genesis omits. When the brothers conspire against Joseph, they do so on the precise day when their father Jacob mourns the anniversary of his mother's passing. This isn't random coincidence, but meaningful symmetry. One sorrow echoes another across generations, all recorded in heaven's perfect ledger. The brothers strip Joseph of his coat and cast him into a pit. In Genesis, this act stems purely from human emotion, jealousy, resentment, rivalry. But Jubilees reveals invisible forces at play. Mastema, the accuser, seizes this opportunity to assault Jacob's faith. The evil one whispers to the brothers, intensifying their hatred beyond natural limits. Yet what appears as a victory for dark powers actually advances heaven's design. Joseph must journey to Egypt. He must rise to authority there. He must preserve his family from famine. All this stands inscribed in the heavenly tablets long before Joseph draws his first breath. When the Midianite merchants pull Joseph from the pit and transport him toward Egypt, they follow a path marked before time's beginning. What looks like catastrophe serves a greater purpose. The brothers believe they've altered their family's story, but they've merely performed their assigned roles in a vast cosmic drama. Jubilees traces the precise timing of Joseph's journey. It counts the days between his departure from Canaan and his ascent in Pharaoh's palace. Nothing occurs too early or too late. Even in foreign lands distant from sacred places, heaven's clock maintains perfect precision. Jacob's grief receives particular attention in Jubilees. The father dons sackcloth, mourning his lost son with bitter weeping. But the text reveals something Genesis doesn't. Angels observe this suffering, recording each moment of anguish. Jacob's pain isn't meaningless, but measured, contributing to the grand account that heaven maintains of human existence. The brothers' deception, dipping Joseph's coat in goat's blood and presenting it to their father, becomes more than family trickery in Jubilees. It represents a temporary victory for Mastema, who delights in falsehood. Yet even this deception serves the greater design, propelling events toward their appointed conclusion. Joseph's descent into slavery, his false imprisonment, his gift for interpreting dreams, all unfold according to heaven's blueprint. What seem like chance encounters and fortunate breaks are actually divine appointments, timed to the day and hour. Jubilees reminds us that Egypt itself had been assigned to Ham's descendants during Noah's division of the earth. Joseph's presence there represents a temporary crossing of boundaries that heaven established. Yet this boundary crossing serves a purpose, preparing for the greater exodus to come. In prison, Joseph doesn't merely endure, he witnesses. His suffering becomes testimony, and throughout, angels mark his path, measuring his steps against the eternal schedule set before creation. Not a moment gets wasted, not a tear falls uncounted. The heavenly scribes record everything in their perfect books. The Joseph cycle concludes, the bondage commences. The famine strikes exactly as Joseph predicted. 7 years of abundance, followed by 7 years of scarcity. But Jubilees perceives more than natural disaster in this pattern. It reveals divine precision, a measured judgment delivered on schedule. Joseph stands prepared, having filled Egypt's storehouses during the prosperous years. Now, as hunger spreads across territories, his brothers journey southward seeking food. The reunion unfolds, much as Genesis describes it. Joseph recognizes them while remaining unknown to them. He tests them, accuses them, finally reveals himself with tears and embraces. Jubilees adds something essential to this familiar account: exact dates. The text tracks precisely when Jacob hears about Joseph being alive, when he begins his journey to Egypt, when he crosses each boundary along the route. Every movement aligns with patterns established at creation, fulfilling promises made to Abraham generations prior. When Jacob arrives in Egypt, Pharaoh welcomes him warmly. But Jubilees reveals what Genesis merely suggests. This welcome marks the beginning of a divine test. Egypt isn't intended as Israel's home, but a temporary refuge, a proving ground. The heavenly tablets already record the exact duration of their stay, the suffering they'll endure, and the mighty deliverance to come. Joseph settles his family in Goshen, providing them the finest of the land. They flourish and multiply, fulfilling God's command to be fruitful. Yet Jubilees cautions that this prosperity carries danger. With comfort comes the risk of forgetting their identity, of adopting Egyptian customs and Egyptian deities. As Joseph ages, Jubilees shows him growing concerned about precisely this issue. But before dying, he gathers his brothers and makes them pledge an oath. They must remember their homeland. They must transport his bones back to Canaan when they eventually return. This isn't merely family sentiment, but cosmic necessity. Joseph belongs to the promised land, not Egyptian soil. Following Joseph's death, a shift occurs that Genesis describes briefly, but Jubilees expands into a spiritual crisis. A new Pharaoh arises, who knew nothing of Joseph. This isn't just political change, but cosmic conflict. The new ruler serves different gods, follows different rhythms. He disrupts the careful balance Joseph maintained between Hebrew identity and Egyptian residence. Gradually, through measured steps recorded in heaven's perfect accounts, the Egyptians begin to fear their Hebrew guests. What starts as suspicion grows into policy. What begins as caution becomes cruelty. Slavery doesn't happen overnight, but unfolds across precisely tracked years. When Pharaoh orders Hebrew boys thrown into the Nile, Jubilees sees more than human evil at work. Mastema, heaven's accuser, stands behind this decree. The dark angel who once whispered to Joseph's brothers now whispers to Egypt's king. Each drowned child marks another assault on Abraham's promised lineage. Yet even in this darkness, heaven's timetable remains unbroken. The suffering has limits, the bondage has an appointed end. Moses' birth doesn't occur by chance, but right on schedule, marked in the heavenly tablets before creation. The deliverer arrives exactly when heaven ordains, not a day sooner or later. Jubilees reveals that angels watch over the chosen people even in their misery. They count the lashes of Egyptian whips. They record each Hebrew tear. They measure the growing cry that will soon reach heaven's throne and trigger the greatest liberation story ever told. The bondage intensifies, but the divine clock keeps perfect time. Moses versus Mastema. The Book of Jubilees rewrites the familiar Exodus story with a startling addition. Behind Pharaoh's stubbornness stands Mastema, heaven's accuser, fighting a battle that spans both realms. Moses grows up in Pharaoh's household, then flees after killing an Egyptian. When he returns to Egypt years later, he carries heaven's authority. But Jubilees reveals something Genesis doesn't. Mastema himself stands ready to oppose him. When Moses first approaches Pharaoh, demanding freedom for the Hebrews, the king refuses, as we anticipate. But Jubilees shows us why. Mastema strengthens his resolve, hardens his heart beyond ordinary human stubbornness. This isn't just political resistance, but cosmic warfare. The plagues begin, but Jubilees describes them differently than Exodus does. Each plague isn't just a natural disaster, but an angelic assault targeting specific Egyptian gods and the dark powers behind them. Blood fills the Nile not just as warning to Pharaoh, but as direct attack on Egypt's river deities. When Moses transforms his staff into a serpent that devours the magician's serpents, Jubilees sees more than clever trickery. Heaven directly challenges Mastema's magic, proving divine power superior to dark arts. The Egyptian magicians don't merely fail, they serve the wrong master. Mastema's response grows desperate. He teaches the Egyptian sorcerers how to mimic some plagues, hoping to convince Pharaoh that Moses wields no special power. For a brief moment, it works. Pharaoh sees blood and frogs created by his own magicians and hardens his heart further. But as the plagues intensify, Mastema's magic fails. The text reveals that heaven places limits on what the accuser can accomplish. He cannot create lice or any smaller creature. His power stops where true creation begins. The magicians themselves admit defeat. This is the finger of God. The battle escalates with each refusal. Flies, cattle disease, boils. Each plague targets a different Egyptian deity, stripping away Mastema's borrowed authority. The darkness that falls over Egypt represents more than absence of light. It symbolizes the accuser's fading influence. When the final plague approaches, death for the firstborn, Jubilees shows us something remarkable. Mastema himself becomes the destroyer, but only under heaven's strict control. The accuser who sought to destroy Israel becomes the unwilling instrument of Egypt's judgment. The very power that fought against Moses must now serve heaven's purpose. The Passover receives special attention in Jubilees. The blood on doorposts isn't just a sign for a passing angel, but a binding restraint on Mastema himself. He cannot enter where this blood marks the entrance. His power breaks against this simple protection. As the Hebrews prepare to leave Egypt, Mastema makes one final attempt to keep them enslaved. He urges Pharaoh to pursue them even after agreeing to their release. The accuser knows what's coming. His defeat at the Red Sea will echo across generations. When the waters part for Israel and close over Egypt's chariots, Jubilees sees more than natural wonder. The sea itself becomes a battlefield between cosmic forces. Angels drive back waters, while Mastema drives forward Egypt's troops. Heaven wins this contest decisively. The drowning of Pharaoh's army doesn't just end the pursuit. It breaks Mastema's power over Israel for a season. The accuser retreats, wounded but not destroyed. He will return to test them in the wilderness. But his authority has suffered a crushing blow. Moses stands victorious, but Jubilees makes clear his victory belongs to heaven's perfect timing. Each plague, each confrontation, each miracle happened exactly when the heavenly tablets decreed it should. Not even Mastema could disrupt the divine schedule. The Exodus begins right on heaven's perfect clock. The Exodus and the covenant clock. The darkness lifts. Dawn breaks over the desert as thousands of Hebrew families stand at the edge of Egypt, their backs to generations of bondage. The timing is flawless. It must be. This moment was inscribed in heaven long before any human walked the earth. For the Book of Jubilees, the Exodus isn't just a historical event. It's a cosmic appointment kept with divine precision. The angel tells Moses that this day was marked in the heavenly calendar from the beginning of creation. The 14th day of the first month, the day when freedom would burst forth like the spring sun. Picture the scene. The Israelites had been told to slaughter lambs at twilight, marking their doorposts with blood. They ate in haste, sandals on feet, staffs in hand. But Jubilees adds a detail Genesis doesn't share. Angels stood watch that night, not just passing over homes, but actively guarding them. The destroyer wasn't merely a plague or natural force, but Mastema's agents seeking any crack in the divine protection. And the Lord accomplished everything according to his word, the angel tells Moses. Every plague, every warning, every moment of the escape, all unfolded according to a schedule set before time began. The Egyptians didn't just face natural disasters. They faced heaven's armies moving with clockwork certainty. The timing matters deeply to the author of Jubilees. The precise day and hour of freedom wasn't random chance or fortunate escape. It was the fulfillment of a promise made to Abraham 430 years earlier to the day. Heaven runs on time. When the Israelites reach the sea, Moses raises his staff. Jubilees describes this moment differently than Exodus does. Here, the sea doesn't just part through divine power. It returns to its original created boundaries. Creation itself makes way for the divine plan. Pharaoh's army drowns not simply through natural forces, but because they've violated sacred time. They've opposed the divine timeline. The sea closing over them isn't just water returning, but time itself crushing those who tried to stand against its flow. The newly freed slaves sing on the shore, but Jubilees adds that angels join them, heavenly voices blending with human ones. Freedom rings across dimensions. The first Passover isn't just remembered, it's eternally present in heaven's courts. And now, as they journey towards Sinai, Jubilees shows us something profound. Each camp, each water stop, each moment of testing in the wilderness, all happen in perfect alignment with heavenly patterns. The manna doesn't fall randomly. It appears precisely when the heavenly storehouses open according to their appointed times. When they reach the mountain, Moses ascends not just to receive law, but to learn how earth's clock synchronizes with heaven's. The first lesson isn't "thou shalt not," but "here is when." The feast days, the Sabbaths, the years of Jubilee, all are taught as ways to align human life with cosmic rhythms. Moses learns that Passover isn't just about remembering freedom, it's about participating in freedom that exists eternally in heaven. Each time the feast is properly observed, heaven and earth align. The barriers thin, but each time it's forgotten or its timing changed, creation itself shudders. The covenant at Sinai then becomes more than rules. It becomes a way of moving through time in harmony with divine purpose. And the greatest sin isn't just breaking a command, it's breaking time itself. Sinai, the real one, the mountain trembles, smoke rises. Lightning flashes across stone peaks as Moses climbs higher, leaving the camp behind. But what happens next is where Jubilees parts ways with the familiar Bible story. On Sinai, Moses doesn't just receive laws carved in stone, he receives the secret history of time itself. The angel of the presence, one of heaven's highest ministers, reveals to Moses that what he's about to learn was written long before humans existed. "I will tell you," the angel says, "from the beginning of creation until my sanctuary is built among you for all eternity." This is Sinai's true purpose, not just law-giving, but time teaching. Moses learns that before anything was made, God created the laws of heaven, including the perfect calendar of 364 days. This number matters deeply in Jubilees. It's perfectly divisible by 7, meaning each date falls on the same day of the week, year after year. No drift, no confusion, no human adjustment needed. The angel shows Moses the heavenly tablets, not just commandments, but the entire script of history written before time began. Every feast day, every appointed time was established before the first human drew breath. The sun, moon, and stars were positioned not just for light, but as cosmic clock's moving hands. As lightning plays across the mountain face, Moses learns that Adam knew these laws. Enoch recorded them. Noah preserved them through the flood. But time and again humans drift from heaven's perfect timing. They follow the changing moon instead of the steady sun. They add days where none should exist. They celebrate at the wrong times, and creation groans. The tablets shown to Moses aren't just rules, they're reality's blueprint. The angel explains how each law connects to events in heaven. The Sabbath mirrors eternal rest. Passover echoes eternal freedom. The Day of Atonement reflects cosmic cleansing. These aren't just days to note, but moments when human experience can touch divine reality. What might seem like dry details in Jubilees, endless dates and times, are actually its beating heart. The angel wants Moses to understand that getting the calendar right isn't just about scheduling. It's about harmony with creation's deepest patterns. While the people wait below, Moses learns that sin isn't just about actions, but about timing. To eat the wrong food is bad, but to eat the right food at the wrong time is cosmic rebellion. To work is good, but to work on Sabbath tears the fabric between worlds. The angel explains that this is why Israel was chosen, not just to follow rules, but to keep time, to be the nation that aligns earth with heaven through perfectly timed observances. Their feasts and fasts aren't just cultural markers, but cosmic tuning forks, bringing creation back into harmony. Moses trembles as he understands the weight of this knowledge. Every date recorded in Jubilees, and there are hundreds, matters because each is a moment when heaven and earth can align, when humans can step briefly into divine patterns. The real revelation at Sinai, according to Jubilees, isn't just morality, but meaning, not just how to behave, but how to belong in time itself. The law isn't burdensome, but liberating. It lets humans move in rhythm with angels, participate in time as heaven experiences it. As Moses prepares to descend, the angel tells him one more truth. These tablets, this heavenly calendar, will be opposed. Nations will create their own times. Even some of Israel will stray. But those who keep heaven's clock will never truly be lost. They will always have a path back to divine harmony. Why Jubilees loves the law? Most people think of laws as restrictions, lines drawn that we shouldn't cross. But Jubilees sees them differently. Here, laws aren't walls, but windows, openings through which divine light pours. The angel speaking to Moses describes each command not as a burden, but as a gift. Each rule connects to a moment in cosmic history, a thread woven into creation's tapestry. These aren't random rules, but revelations of how reality works at its deepest level. Take the Sabbath in Jubilees. It's not just a day off. It's the day when humans can taste what angels experience eternally. The angel tells Moses that even in heaven, the highest powers observe Sabbath. It's not that they need rest, they need harmony. The seventh day isn't arbitrary, but essential to creation's rhythm. God blessed the seventh day alone, the angel says. All holy things are blessed and hallowed on this day. When humans honor Sabbath, they step into alignment with powers they can barely comprehend. The food laws might seem strange to modern readers. Don't eat this, don't touch that. But Jubilees frames them as protection, not restriction. The angel explains that these foods connect to spiritual forces. Some strengthen the human spirit, others invite corruption. The laws aren't about health, but about spiritual integrity. Sexual regulations in Jubilees aren't just moral codes, but reflections of heavenly order. The angel reveals that violations of these boundaries don't just harm humans, but tear at creation's fabric. When Israel follows these laws, they're not just being good, they're participating in cosmic repair. Even stranger rules make sense in this light. The command to cover nakedness when relieving oneself in Jubilees. This isn't about modesty, but about maintaining boundaries between holy and common. Angels shield their eyes in heaven's most sacred spaces. Humans mirror this pattern on earth. For the author of Jubilees, the law's beauty lies in its perfect timing. Each command has its moment. Circumcision on the 8th day, harvest offerings at precise times, festivals when the sun reaches certain positions. These aren't just details, they're doorways to participation in eternal patterns. The law in Jubilees differs from other Jewish texts of the time. Here, laws aren't open to interpretation or adaptation. They're fixed as creation itself. The angel tells Moses that these commands existed before humans and will outlast them. They aren't cultural artifacts, but cosmic constants. This explains Jubilees' most striking feature, its obsession with getting things exactly right. The wrong day, the wrong ritual, the wrong boundaries matter because they break alignment with heaven's perfect order. Sin isn't just about hurting others, but about disrupting harmony between realms. Moses learns that the law isn't a test of obedience, but an invitation to belonging. By living according to heaven's rhythms, humans can step partially into eternity, experiencing time as angels do, not as a line rushing forward, but as a dance cycling through perfect patterns. The greatest gift of the law, according to Jubilees, is that it makes humans more than mortal. By following heaven's time, they participate in something death cannot touch. Their lives become echoes of eternal patterns, their smallest actions rippling across dimensions. And so the laws are recorded not as burdens, but as love letters from heaven, instructions for how to live in time while touching eternity. Feast days, blood, and timing. The sun slips below the horizon, the first stars appear, a new month begins. But which month? According to what calendar? For most ancient people, these might seem like simple questions. But for the author of Jubilees, they're matters of cosmic importance. The angel explains to Moses that feast days aren't just celebrations. They're moments when the veil between heaven and earth grows thin. When humans celebrate at the right time, they briefly step into harmony with angelic rhythms. But celebrate on the wrong day, and the moment's power is lost. Passover begins the sacred year. The angel describes how this feast doesn't just commemorate freedom, but actively channels its power. When families gather on the 14th day of the first month, not the 13th, not the 15th, they align with the moment when liberation's energy flows most strongly from heaven to earth. The timing must be precise. Jubilees insists on a 364-day solar year, not the lunar calendar many Jewish communities would later adopt. The angel warns Moses that following the moon leads to drift, to celebration on the wrong days, to cosmic misalignment. They will disturb the days, the angel says, and make a day of testimony something worthless, and a profane day a feast. This isn't just calendar confusion, it's spiritual disaster. Blood plays a central role in these precisely timed feasts, not because heaven demands sacrifice, but because blood carries life's essence. When properly offered at the right moment, it becomes a conduit between worlds. The angel describes how the blood placed on doorposts at Passover forms an actual barrier against destructive forces. The Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, receives special attention. The angel tells Moses that this isn't just about forgiveness, but about cosmic cleansing. On this day, heaven's courts are most accessible. Prayers rise more directly, but pray on the wrong day, and those prayers find closed gates. Tabernacles, the Feast of Booths, connects humans to their wandering ancestors. But more importantly, it connects them to the early days of creation, when boundaries between heaven and earth were newer and thinner. Building temporary shelters isn't symbolic. It's participatory. Humans briefly live as Adam did, more directly under heaven's gaze. First fruits, Pentecost, new moons. Each feast creates a specific bridge between worlds, but only when observed at the exact right time. Jubilees treats these moments as physical realities, not just cultural memories. The angel warns Moses about a future problem. Some will follow a lunar calendar of 354 days. This seems small, just 10 days difference per year. But these errors accumulate. Feasts drift through seasons. Alignments break. Heaven's gates open, but no one stands ready to walk through. For the author of Jubilees, these calendar disputes aren't academic debates, but spiritual warfare. The forces opposing God's order, led by Mastema, actively work to confuse the times and seasons. When Israel follows the wrong calendar, they unknowingly serve confusion's prince. This explains Jubilees' harsh language about calendar keepers, who forget the right timing. They aren't just making mistakes, they're breaking the covenant at its core. True faithfulness isn't just about what you do, but when you do it. Blood, timing, and covenant twine together in Jubilees' understanding of feast days. These aren't just holidays, but holy days, moments when eternity touches time, when human celebration harmonizes with angelic worship, when the barriers between worlds grow momentarily thin. And so the feasts become more than memory. They become medicine for a broken world, realigning creation with Creator through the power of perfect timing. Mastema's final tricks. While Moses receives heaven's perfect calendar on the mountain, darkness gathers below. The angel reveals to him that Mastema, heaven's great accuser, has not been idle. As divine order is being explained above, chaos is being sown below. Jubilees offers a unique vision of spiritual warfare. Mastema isn't presented as God's equal opposite, not quite Satan, as later traditions would know him. He's more like a prosecuting attorney who's grown too fond of convicting the accused. Originally tasked with testing humans, he's developed a taste for their failure. The angel tells Moses how Mastema approaches God's throne with accusations against Israel. "See how quickly they turn aside," he argues. "They aren't worthy of your law." But his deeper game is more subtle. He works to confuse the times and seasons, to blur the calendar lines that connect earth to heaven. When the people grow restless at the mountain's base, Mastema sees opportunity. He whispers doubts. Moses has been gone too long. The timing is wrong. The wait has exceeded what was promised. Temporal confusion leads to spiritual rebellion. The golden calf doesn't just represent idolatry and jubilees. It represents a break in time itself, a human attempt to create their own religious schedule, rather than waiting for heaven's appointed moment. And this, the angel explains, is Mastema's specialty, not just tempting people to do wrong things, but to do things at wrong times. But Mastema's influence extends beyond this moment. The angel reveals his pattern through history, always appearing at transitions, at boundary moments, at times when heaven's clock strikes important hours. Remember Abraham's near sacrifice of Isaac. Jubilees reveals that Mastema challenged God. "This man loves his son. Ask for the boy as a burnt offering. He'll refuse." Testing Abraham wasn't originally God's idea, but came from the accuser's suggestion. When Jacob wrestled until daybreak, his opponent wasn't just a mysterious figure, but one of Mastema's agents, trying to prevent him from entering the promised land on heaven's timetable. Even the Egyptian magicians who mimicked Moses' first signs weren't just skilled humans, but men drawing on Mastema's limited power. The angel explains that Mastema can copy divine work, but never create originally. He can only distort what God has made. The plagues of Egypt weren't just about freeing Israel, but about binding Mastema. The angel reveals that after the early contests between Moses and the magicians, God allows Mastema to be bound for a time, limiting his interference in the Exodus. His temporary restraint explains why the later plagues met no magical resistance. But now, as Israel stands poised to receive the covenant, Mastema works more subtly. He doesn't oppose God directly, but works to disconnect people from divine timing. Wrong calendars, imprecise feast days, forgotten Sabbaths, these become his tools. The punishment for these errors isn't arbitrary, but organic. When people step out of heaven's time, they expose themselves to forces that divine timing would have protected them from. The angel explains that disease, conflict, and confusion naturally flow into the gaps created by misaligned observance. Generations that follow wrong calendars won't just irritate God. They'll drift further from reality itself, becoming vulnerable to Mastema's growing influence. The accuser doesn't need to destroy people. He simply needs to get them operating on the wrong timetable. The most chilling revelation comes when the angel tells Moses that punishment often spans generations, not as divine vengeance, but because temporal distortions take time to correct. Children inherit not just genes, but cosmic positioning. Realignment with heaven's time often takes generations to achieve. Yet the angel offers hope. Even in times of greatest confusion, some will maintain the true calendar. A remnant will celebrate at the right moments. And through them, the path back to alignment remains open, narrow, but never completely closed. The forbidden calendars. In the hidden war of time itself, nothing sparked more fury than the clash of calendars. Jubilees stands firm on one central truth. God created a perfect 364-day solar year. This wasn't merely a counting system, but the heartbeat of creation itself. The sun's path marked holy time, steady and unchanging. Yet across the ancient world, other peoples followed the fickle moon with its wandering months. The Babylonians, whose culture seeped into Jewish life during exile, tracked lunar cycles that shifted with each passing year. These competing calendars weren't just different ways to mark days. For the writer of Jubilees, they represented cosmic rebellion. When Israel adopted lunar reckoning, they broke harmony with heaven itself. The holy feasts, meant to align with celestial powers, fell on wrong days. Prayers missed their mark. Sacrifices lost power. Why such passion over a calendar? Because in Jubilees, time isn't just passing moments. It's God's most sacred creation. The 364-day year divides perfectly into weeks. 52 complete 7-day cycles, with each season lasting exactly 13 weeks. 4 perfect quarters, each 91 days, no messy leftover hours or minutes to adjust. Within this structure, holy days never drift, Passover always falls on the same date, Sabbaths stay fixed points in eternity. This order mirrors heaven's own rhythm. Angels keep the same feasts on the same days, year after unchanging year. The community of Qumran clutched this belief like a lifeline. Their scrolls reveal an obsession with the solar calendar far beyond normal religious concern. For them, the temple priests in Jerusalem had fallen into cosmic error. By following lunar months, they'd broken the eternal covenant. These calendar wars weren't academic disputes, but a battle for divine favor. The Qumran sect believed catastrophes fell on Israel precisely because they'd abandoned heaven's true timeline. Follow false time, reap divine punishment. In one striking passage, Jubilees describes angels placing the solar system in motion specifically to create this divine clockwork. The sun, the greater light, rules the day and year. The moon serves only as night's lamp, not time's measure. And God appointed the sun to be a great sign upon the earth for days, Sabbaths, months, feasts, years, Sabbaths of years, Jubilees, and for all seasons of the years. For modern ears, such calendar fixation seems strange. But in ancient minds, right ritual at right time opened doors between worlds. A prayer said when heaven wasn't listening wasted breath. A feast celebrated on wrong days missed its purpose. The Essenes, who treasured Jubilees, lived this belief daily. Their dawn prayers tracked solar progress. Their celebrations ignored Jerusalem's official calendar. They waited for heaven to restore proper time when sun, stars, feasts, and angels would again move in perfect synchronization. This battle over time didn't end with ancient sects. It echoes through religious history whenever groups claim special insight into divine timing. The calendar remains a powerful symbol of who controls sacred rhythm, priests, prophets, or the voice of tradition, the land, the law, the legacy. In Jubilee's vision, 3 strands weave together into one unbreakable covenant: land, law, and time. Each belongs to the others in eternal harmony. The land of Israel isn't just territory, but sacred space where heaven touches earth. The law isn't merely rules, but the operating system of creation, and time binds everything together in cycles of meaning. When the angel reveals these connections to Moses, he speaks with urgent clarity. The land given to Abraham's children has borders drawn by divine hands. Each tribe's portion matches a heavenly pattern. Rivers, mountains, and plains mirror cosmic geography. And he said to the angels, "Let us make man in our image and likeness." And they created Adam and his wife and blessed them. And God showed him the land from the river of Egypt to the great river Euphrates, all the land which was to be his seed's inheritance forever. This land promise carries strict conditions. It remains Israel's only, while they follow God's timetable and commands. Break the calendar, the Sabbaths, or the food laws, and the land itself will expel them. Jubilees describes this connection in physical terms. The soil actually rejects those who defile it. The law in Jubilees goes far beyond Moses. It existed before creation, written on heavenly tablets by God's own hand. Angels follow these same commands. Adam knew them in Eden. Abraham observed them centuries before Sinai. The patriarchs weren't fumbling toward truth, but kept the full law through angelic teaching. This eternal view of Torah challenges later rabbinic innovations. For Jubilees, no human court can adjust divine law. No emergency suspends Sabbath rules. The commands stand fixed like stars, unchanging reference points in a shifting world. Most striking is how Jubilees connects Israel's national story to cosmic stakes. Their keeping or breaking covenant doesn't just affect their prosperity, but determines creation's fate. When they follow holy time and law, harmony flows through all realms. When they rebel, chaos threatens even angelic spheres. The writer frames this responsibility as both burden and glory. Israel alone carries knowledge of true time. They alone preserve the rhythms that sustain worlds. Their priests serve alongside heavenly counterparts. Their festivals open gates between dimensions. This legacy passes down through blood and teaching. Jubilees traces careful genealogies, showing how covenant knowledge traveled from father to son. Abraham blesses Jacob, not Esau, because only Jacob will preserve the calendar. Joseph resists Egypt's temptations to keep time's truth alive. For modern readers seeking ancient wisdom, this interweaving of land, law, and legacy reveals religion's deepest roots. Before theology came these primal connections, holy space, sacred rhythm, and the chain of memory linking generations. Jubilees offers not just rules, but a complete vision of human purpose in cosmic order. The prophecy of apostasy. As Moses receives these heavenly revelations, the angel's voice turns somber. With perfect clarity, he unfolds Israel's future failures. Though they've witnessed God's power at the sea and at Sinai, they will not remain faithful. Though they carry time's secrets and law's wisdom, they will turn aside. This prophecy isn't vague warning, but precise foreknowledge. Israel will enter the promised land. They'll enjoy prosperity. Then, slowly, generation by generation, they'll forget heaven's calendar. They'll adopt foreign ways. They'll break Sabbaths, eat forbidden foods, intermarry with nations who follow false gods and false time. And they will forget all my law, and all my commandments and all my judgments, and will go astray concerning new moons, Sabbaths, festivals, jubilees, and ordinances. The angel doesn't speak with anger, but with sorrow, like a parent who sees their child's painful path ahead. This falling away isn't sudden rebellion, but slow drift, like a boat untethered from shore. First, they'll keep the feasts on wrong days. Then they'll neglect them entirely. Finally, they'll forget why these rhythms mattered at all. Divine response follows in measured steps. Warnings come through prophets. When those go unheeded, foreign oppressors arrive. The temple, center of right timing and sacrifice, falls to enemies. The land, linked to covenant keeping, expels its people into exile. Yet even in this dark forecast shines a thread of hope. The apostasy, though certain, isn't final. After punishment comes restoration. A faithful remnant preserves true knowledge through the darkest times. They return to the calendar of their fathers. They rebuild broken altars. They recalculate holy time. And after this, they will turn to me from among the nations, with all their heart, and with all their soul, and with all their strength, and I will gather them from among all the nations. This cycle of faithfulness, falling away, and return shapes Jubilee's view of history. It's not linear progress, but spiral movement away from and back to covenant truth. Each generation faces the same choice as their ancestors, to follow heaven's rhythm or the world's. For the book's original readers, likely living through cultural pressures under Greek or early Roman rule, this prophecy offered both warning and comfort. Their struggles weren't unique, but part of an ancient pattern. Their choices carried the same weight as their forefathers. And faithful keeping of the solar calendar wasn't outdated tradition, but revolutionary resistance against cosmic error. The prophecy ends with ultimate restoration. Though humans falter, divine purpose doesn't. The covenant written in stars and seasons outlasts human weakness. Time itself leads back to harmony between heaven and earth. The final generations. As the angel's voice grows more intense, he lifts the veil on time's final chapters. The story moves beyond Israel's cycles of faith and failure to glimpse creation's culmination. These passages shimmer with apocalyptic hope. History has a direction, an ending, a purpose. Time itself will fold back toward its beginning. The human lifespan, shortened after Eden's loss, will gradually lengthen again. Children born in these final days will grow gray-haired in wisdom, seeing 1,000 years pass. Disease will retreat. The earth will yield abundance without painful labor. And in those days, children will begin to study the laws and to seek the commandments and to return to the path of righteousness. Behind these earthly changes, vast movements unfold in spiritual realms. Angelic hosts gather like armies preparing for final battle. Mastema's powers weaken as light increases across the world. The careful barriers between heaven and earth, maintained since Adam's exile from Eden, grow thin. These aren't instant changes, but gradual transformations across generations. Jubilees sees redemption working through natural processes, not sudden rupture. Families teach forgotten wisdom. Communities rebuild covenant practices. The true calendar spreads slowly, realigning human activity with celestial harmony. Yet alongside this gentle restoration comes judgment. Those who cling to false time and corrupt practices face exclusion from the renewed world. The angel speaks of separation between faithful and unfaithful, between those who kept covenant memory alive and those who abandoned it. And the days shall begin to grow many and increase among the children of men, till their days draw near to 1,000 years, as it was before. Most striking is how this vision differs from later apocalyptic writings. There's no cosmic war, no destroying fire, no new heaven and earth. Instead, creation heals from within. The same sun and moon that witnessed Eden's morning will see paradise restored. The same land promised to Abraham welcomes his children home. The same law given at Sinai guides final generations. For listeners seeking ancient wisdom, this offers profound perspective on time itself. History isn't meaningless cycle or straight-line progress, but spiral return to first truths. The future holds not alien wonders, but recovery of what was lost. The golden age lies not just behind, but ahead. In these final scenes, the boundaries between story and prophecy blur. The angel shows Moses these coming days as if they've already happened, recorded on heaven's tablets before creation began. From divine perspective, the last generation already exists alongside the first. The account ends not with detailed predictions, but with quiet confidence. The pattern set in stars and seasons cannot fail. The covenant written in heaven will find fulfillment on earth. Time itself serves divine purpose, carrying creation home. Jubilees disappears after guiding Israel for centuries. The Book of Jubilees faded from Jewish life like morning mist. Once revered alongside Torah in some communities, it slipped from canon to curiosity. This vanishing wasn't sudden, but gradual eclipse as rabbinic Judaism took shape after Jerusalem's fall. The rabbis who rebuilt Jewish life after the temple's destruction faced urgent questions. How could covenant continue without sacrifice? How could holy time be marked without priests? Their answers shaped a more flexible, portable faith, one where prayer replaced offering, where study became highest worship. In this new world, Jubilee's rigid calendar seemed impractical. The book's firm position that Sabbath days needed to consistently align with identical yearly dates created friction with rabbinical calculations. Its assertion that ancient patriarchs observed complete law, even prior to the events at Sinai, challenged emerging interpretations. Most significantly troubling was how its celestial tablets provided minimal space for the oral Torah that rabbis considered their sacred responsibility. There existed in ancient times a conflict upon Mount Zion regarding the Sabbath, because the covenant had been forgotten and the Sabbath had been profaned. The community at the Dead Sea that valued Jubilees highly did not endure to defend its particular vision. The temples in Jerusalem, including both the authorized one and what the Qumran sect considered their spiritual claim, were left in ruins. The calendar conflicts that previously ignited heated discussions became less urgent within a world lacking altar flames. At the same time, emerging Christianity confronted its own uncertainties concerning Jewish law and temporal matters. Certain groups may have valued Jubilees for a brief period. Reverberations of its distinctive narratives surface within early Christian documents. However, as the emerging faith expanded throughout non-Jewish populations, intricate calendar systems appeared less essential than straightforward gospel teaching. The Eastern churches demonstrated greater receptiveness. Within Ethiopia particularly, Jubilees discovered an enduring sanctuary. There it continues as canonical scripture even today. Among the rare locations where its understanding of time and law continues shaping religious practice. Ethiopian Christians safeguarded what other communities abandoned, preserving this ancient perspective alive. What led to this book's dismissal within most Jewish and Christian communities? Potentially, its inflexible calendar proved impossible to maintain across dispersed communities. Potentially, its severe purity requirements proved difficult within everyday existence. Or potentially, its assertion of angelic authority posed challenges to human religious leaders. More probably, Jubilees simply embodied a path that remained untaken. Its conception of unchanging law, inscribed before creation itself, and constraining even celestial beings, provided certainty while restricting development. The rabbinical approach, where successive generations reinterpret tradition anew, demonstrated greater adaptability across changing eras. Throughout 2,000 years, Jubilees remained dormant within Ethiopian manuscripts, examined solely by researchers of obscure literature. The majority of Western Bibles excluded it completely. Most religious communities forgot its existence entirely. The book, claiming to possess told time mysteries, became itself a casualty of time's progression until desert caverns released their treasures and ancient perspectives spoke once more. Ethiopia preserves the flame. Within the highlands of East Africa, where ancient churches populate the terrain and time appears to pause, something remarkable occurred. The Book of Jubilees never vanished. While the remaining world forgot this unusual text, Ethiopia maintained it closely, regarding it as holy scripture across nearly 2 millennia. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church stands uniquely among Christian traditions in maintaining Jubilees as canonical scripture. Their Bible, unlike every other across the globe, contains this enigmatic text together with additional books most Christians have never encountered. When visiting an Ethiopian church presently and requesting to view their scriptures, you will discover Jubilees present, silently waiting as though it had never been misplaced whatsoever. Why did Ethiopia welcome what others dismissed? The explanation resides partially in their separation from the theological discussions that formed Western Christianity. Isolated from Rome and Constantinople through geography and Islamic growth, Ethiopian Christianity developed its distinct trajectory, maintaining ancient traditions that disappeared elsewhere. However, this narrative contains more than mere isolation. Ethiopian Christians discovered within Jubilees something speaking profoundly to their comprehension of faith and temporal matters. The book's concentration on sacred calendars, pure worship practices, and angelic supervision resonated deeply with Ethiopian spiritual sensibilities. Its severe regulations concerning purity and its cosmic perspective of history aligned with how Ethiopian Christians perceived the world. Within Ethiopian tradition, Jubilees is not referenced by that particular name. They recognize it as the Little Genesis, or occasionally the Book of Division, These designations suggest how they comprehended its function as a more profound, more thorough interpretation of creation, and the patriarchs with particular attention toward how time itself was portioned and allocated. The preservation of Jubilees in Ethiopia connects to another cherished text, the Kebra Nagast, or Glory of Kings. This distinctly Ethiopian work recounts the narrative of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, asserting that their son Menelik transported the Ark of the Covenant to Ethiopia. The Kebra Nagast shares with Jubilees a preoccupation with divine selection, sacred objects, and an uninterrupted chain connecting heaven to earth. Ethiopian Orthodox priests continue reading from Jubilees throughout certain ceremonies, especially those marking temporal transitions like New Year's, seasonal shifts, and births. When they perform this, they maintain a tradition that has continued unbroken since ancient times, while everywhere else the book was forgotten or prohibited. Within the isolated monasteries of Lake Tana and the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela, manuscripts of Jubilees have been meticulously copied across centuries. Several of these handwritten texts represent works of remarkable beauty, featuring vibrant illustrations depicting angels delivering the heavenly tablets to Moses. The Ethiopian scribes who maintained these copies frequently remained unaware they were keeping alive something that had disappeared from the remainder of Christianity. Ethiopia's maintenance of Jubilees provides us a window into an alternative history, one where this book was not rejected but treasured as divine revelation. In Ethiopian perception, Jubilees is not strange or heretical. It stands simply as part of God's Word, providing insights into heaven's viewpoint on time, purity, and covenant. When Western scholars finally rediscovered Jubilees during the 19th century, they were astounded to find it still alive in Ethiopia. The initial modern translations originated not from ancient fragments, but from living Ethiopian manuscripts. These texts had been affectionately maintained across generations, their pages worn smooth through the fingers of priests who never questioned their sacred value. Ethiopia's dedication to Jubilees reminds us that religious history is not a straightforward story of progress or agreement. It is also about what different communities select to remember and what they determine matters. Within the cool mountain atmosphere of the Ethiopian highlands, Jubilees never lost its voice or its authority. It continued speaking even when the remaining world had ceased listening. For the faithful in Ethiopia, the angels of Jubilees continue watching over sacred time. The heavenly tablets continue recording divine laws, and the careful measurement of days according to God's calendar continues mattering profoundly. Within this singular corner of the world, Jubilees never required rediscovery because it had never been lost initially. Jubilees at Qumran. The year was 1947. A young Bedouin shepherd tossed a stone into a cave near the Dead Sea and heard something fracture. That unexpected sound resulted in one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of all time, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Concealed in clay vessels and forgotten across 2,000 years, these ancient texts would revolutionize our comprehension of early Judaism. And among the most valued writings of this desert community was our mysterious book, Jubilees. At Qumran, where a community of Jewish sectarians resided in the desert awaiting the end times, Jubilees was not a forgotten curiosity. It was fundamental to their worldview. Archaeologists have discovered more copies of Jubilees at Qumran than nearly any other non-biblical text. These people did not simply read Jubilees, they lived according to it. The Qumran community, frequently identified with the ancient Jewish group called the Essenes, had separated themselves from mainstream Jewish existence. They believed the Jerusalem temple had become corrupted and that authentic worship could only occur in their desert settlement. What attracted them to Jubilees was its conception of perfect, divinely ordained time. The book's 364-day solar calendar became the pulse of their communal existence. This calendar was not merely a method to mark days. It represented a religious declaration. By following Jubilees calendar rather than the lunar calendar utilized in Jerusalem, the Qumran community was announcing the temple authorities illegitimate. In their perspective, Jerusalem had fallen under the influence of false timekeeping, breaking covenant with heaven's ordained rhythms. Every festival, every Sabbath at Qumran followed Jubilees' schedule. Community members believed that by aligning themselves with this heavenly calendar, they were joining the angels in perfect worship. When they prayed or presented sacrifices, they did so at precisely the moments when the gates of heaven stood open according to Jubilees' cosmic schedule. Fragments of Jubilees discovered in the caves reveal how meticulously these texts were copied. Some scrolls display signs of frequent handling, their edges worn thin by fingers that turned these pages repeatedly. Other religious writings discovered at Qumran, like the community rule and the war scroll, echo Jubilees' themes of cosmic dualism, angelic oversight, and predetermined history. The Qumran calendar reveals precisely how seriously they regarded Jubilees. Their year consisted of exactly 52 weeks, a perfect 364 days. Each season contained 3 months of 30 days, plus one additional day at the season's conclusion. This perfect symmetry meant festivals consistently fell on identical weekdays, year after year. Sunday remained always holy. Wednesday remained always sacred. Time itself transformed into a form of worship. For the Qumran community, this extended beyond merely having a reliable calendar. It concerned being synchronized with heaven. They believed that when they celebrated Passover or the Day of Atonement on different days than Jerusalem did, they were the ones achieving correctness. The angels, they were certain, were celebrating alongside them, while the corrupt priests in Jerusalem had fallen out of rhythm with cosmic time. In the arid desert atmosphere, these scrolls survived for 2 millennia, waiting to tell us their narrative. When scholars finally assembled the fragments, they realized that what they were observing was nothing less than a calendrical war, a battle over who controlled sacred time. Jubilees stood at the center of this conflict, offering divine authority to those who felt the mainstream had lost its direction. What stands out about the Qumran texts is how they reveal a community that did not just read Jubilees as an interesting historical document. They saw it as living scripture, more authoritative in certain ways than portions of the Torah itself. The book's strict regulations about purity, its emphasis on predestined events, and its focus on angelic guidance became foundations of daily life beside the Dead Sea. The discovery of Jubilees at Qumran transformed how scholars understood both the book and the community. Here was evidence that Jubilees was not a marginal text, but a central one for at least some ancient Jews. The multiple copies carefully preserved spoke to its significance. For the people who concealed these scrolls, Jubilees was not just a book. It was a way of life, a connection to heaven's perfect order, in a world they perceived as increasingly chaotic. In the silence of the Judean desert, where stars shine with unusual clarity, the Qumran community lived according to Jubilees' cosmic clock. They believed themselves to be the true Israel, the remnant maintaining faith while others strayed. And central to that faith was the conviction that time itself was sacred, not just how you utilized it, but how you counted it. In the end, they concealed their precious scrolls, perhaps hoping someone in the future would comprehend what they had attempted to preserve. The rebellion of the scholars. For centuries, Jubilees slept in the dust, forgotten by almost everyone. Then arrived the age of modern scholarship, when curious minds began searching for lost voices from the past. In the mid-19th century, European travelers to Ethiopia brought back unusual manuscripts. Among them, copies of a book most Western scholars had never heard of. The Book of Jubilees had re-entered the academic world. Initially, these scholars did not know what to make of this strange text. Was it ancient or medieval? Jewish or Christian? Original or derivative? The hunt for answers sparked a quiet revolution in how we understand the world that gave birth to both Judaism and Christianity. What began as curiosity about an odd text became a full-scale reassessment of religious history. German scholar August Dillmann published the first translation of Jubilees in 1850. Working from Ethiopian manuscripts, his work opened the floodgates. Soon, scholars across Europe were debating the origins and meaning of this rediscovered book. Each new translation into Latin, English, French, and other languages brought fresh insights and questions. Dating Jubilees proved especially challenging. The book presents itself as older than Genesis, dictated by angels to Moses. Yet its content shows awareness of events and ideas from much later periods. Scholars found themselves tracking subtle clues, references to historical events, linguistic patterns, theological concepts that emerged at particular times. It was like attempting to solve a puzzle where many pieces remained missing. By the early 20th century, most researchers had settled on the 2nd century before the Common Era as the likely time of composition. This placed Jubilees in a crucial period when Jewish identity was being hotly contested. The Maccabean revolt against Greek influence had just succeeded, and different Jewish groups were competing to define what faithful living should look like. Jubilees, with its strict rules and cosmic vision, was part of this struggle. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1947 changed everything. Finding multiple copies of Jubilees at Qumran confirmed both its antiquity and its importance. Carbon dating of the scrolls proved that Jubilees existed much earlier than some had thought. The scholarly world had to reckon with the reality that this was not a fringe text, but a central one for at least some ancient Jews. New questions emerged. Who wrote Jubilees and why? Some scholars pointed to the book's priestly concerns, suggesting it came from temple circles. Others noted its similarities to apocalyptic literature, connecting it to visionary groups on Judaism's margins. Still, others saw links to the emerging Pharisaic movement, with its focus on applying Torah to daily life. The debate over Jubilees' origin became part of a larger scholarly rebellion against old ways of understanding ancient Judaism. For generations, scholars had viewed ancient Jewish thought through the lens of later rabbinic Judaism, assuming a relatively straight line of development. Jubilees helped shatter this oversimplified picture, revealing a world of competing Jewish voices, each with their own vision of covenant life. By the late 20th century, Jubilees had moved from obscurity to prominence in the study of Second Temple Judaism. Whole conferences were devoted to its content. Doctoral dissertations explored its themes. New translations appeared regularly, each trying to capture its distinctive voice more accurately. A book once dismissed as a curious footnote had become central to understanding the world that produced both rabbinic Judaism and early Christianity. Perhaps the most heated debate centered on what scholars called pseudepigrapha, ancient texts written in the name of revered figures from the past. Jubilees claims Moses as its receiver, though it was written centuries after him. Some researchers dismissed such works as forgeries, while others argued they represented a different understanding of authorship, where channeling the spirit of an ancient figure was more important than historical accuracy. Through all these scholarly debates, something remarkable happened. Jubilees began to speak again after centuries of silence. Its distinctive voice, concerned with precise timekeeping, cosmic order, and strict boundaries, added a crucial perspective to our understanding of the fertile, chaotic period that gave birth to the religious traditions that still shape our world. Today's scholars approach Jubilees with more nuance than their predecessors, seeing it not as a bizarre deviation, but as a witness to the rich diversity of ancient Jewish thought. The book that once seemed so strange now helps us see how varied and vibrant Judaism was in the centuries before rabbinic tradition became dominant. And in recovering Jubilees, modern scholarship did not just find a lost text, it rediscovered a lost world. Jubilees and the Book of Enoch. Deep in the heart of Jubilees lies a surprising connection, a bridge to another mysterious text called the Book of Enoch. These two ancient works, both excluded from most biblical canons, share a special relationship. They speak the same unusual language of angels, cosmic secrets, and heavenly tablets. They tell overlapping stories about watchers, giants, and divine judgment. And together, they reveal a forgotten strand of Jewish belief that once flourished but was later pushed aside. Enoch appears in Genesis as almost a footnote, a man who walked with God and was no more, for God took him. This cryptic reference becomes, in the Book of Enoch, a full-blown cosmic journey. Enoch travels through heaven's levels, witnesses the punishment of fallen angels, and returns with hidden knowledge. Jubilees takes this expanded story of Enoch and weaves it seamlessly into its retelling of Genesis, giving him a central role as the first human to understand heaven's calendars. In Jubilees, Enoch becomes the first man to fully grasp sacred time. He does not just observe the heavenly cycles, he records them, becoming the original astronomer priest. The book tells us he was the first among men who learned writing and knowledge and wisdom, and who wrote down in a book the signs of heaven according to their months. This vision of Enoch as cosmic secretary echoes throughout the Book of Enoch itself. Both texts share a fascination with a particular group of angels called watchers. In their telling, these heavenly beings were assigned to watch over humanity, but fell from grace when they desired human women. Their illicit unions produced giants who brought violence and chaos to the earth. While Genesis merely hints at this story, both Enoch and Jubilees expand it dramatically, making it central to understanding why the flood had to come. The shared cosmology of these books reveals a world where angels and demons actively shape human history. Both texts describe an angel named Azazel or Asael, who teaches forbidden knowledge to humans, metalwork, weapon-making, cosmetics, and other arts that lead people away from simple piety. Both also feature an angel named Mastema, a Satangent-like figure who accuses humans before God and tests their faithfulness. Perhaps most striking is how both books describe time and history as predetermined, written on heavenly tablets long before events unfold on earth. In this view, nothing happens by chance. Each event, each turn in human affairs follows a script already inscribed in heaven. This deterministic vision offers both comfort and challenge. Comfort that God remains in control, challenge in the limited space it leaves for human freedom. Modern scholars have coined the term Enochic Judaism to describe the worldview these texts represent. This perspective emphasizes cosmic dualism, angelic revelation, astronomical precision, and predetermined history. It differs in key ways from the Judaism that eventually became dominant after the destruction of the Temple in 70 of the Common Era. In Enochic Judaism, the temple calendar is secondary to heaven's perfect timetable, and Moses shares authority with other revealers, like Enoch. The relationship between Jubilees and Enoch raises fascinating questions about influence and origins. Did one borrow from the other? Did both draw on older traditions now lost to us? Were they products of the same community? Scholars continue to debate these questions, but most agree that these texts represent a shared intellectual world, one where heaven's secrets were available to those with the wisdom to receive them. Both books show special interest in a perfectly ordered universe where everything has its place in time. Their angels are not just messengers, but cosmic administrators, each with specific duties in maintaining world order. Their demons are not just tempters, but systematic opponents of divine harmony. And their humans are not just moral agents, but players in a cosmic drama whose script was written before time began. This shared vision helps explain why both books eventually fell out of favor with Rabbinic Judaism and most of Christianity. Their elaborate angelology, their determinism, and their claims to revelation beyond the Torah did not fit well with emerging orthodoxies. As Judaism rebuilt itself after the temple's destruction and as Christianity defined its boundaries, texts like Jubilees and Enoch were increasingly viewed with suspicion. Yet these books never fully disappeared. They survived in places like Ethiopia and in fragments hidden in desert caves. Their ideas echoed in later mystical traditions, in apocalyptic movements, and in folk beliefs about angels and demons. Even when officially excluded, their cosmic vision continued to speak to people drawn to a more mystical, determined understanding of time and history. Today, reading Jubilees alongside Enoch helps us recover this lost strand of ancient thought, a perspective that sees human history as deeply embedded in cosmic patterns, where angels and demons battle over human destiny, and where heaven's perfect order stands as the model for life on earth. Together, they remind us that the religious world that produced both Judaism and Christianity was far more diverse and complex than later traditions often acknowledged. Jubilees and the Gospels. When the first followers of Jesus began writing down his story, they were not creating something entirely new. They were adding to an ongoing conversation about God's work in history. And though they might not have known it, some of the ideas they wove into their Gospels echoed themes from the Book of Jubilees. These quiet connections help us see how early Christian thought grew from the rich soil of diverse Jewish traditions. The Gospel writers never directly quote Jubilees, yet their work shows traces of similar concerns about sacred time, angelic guidance, cosmic conflict, and the fulfillment of ages-old plans. These parallels do not mean the Gospel authors necessarily read Jubilees. Rather, they suggest that both Jubilees and the Gospels drew from shared streams of Jewish thought that were flowing in the first century. Consider how Matthew begins his Gospel with a carefully structured genealogy, dividing history into 3 sets of 14 generations. This is not just a family tree, it is a statement about time having meaningful patterns. The author sees Jesus arriving at precisely the right moment in a divinely orchestrated timeline. This concern with sacred chronology feels very much like Jubilees, where every significant event happens at its appointed time according to heaven's calendar. Luke's Gospel opens with angelic announcements to Zechariah and Mary, heavenly messengers bringing news of divine plans unfolding. Throughout Luke, angels appear at pivotal moments, guiding, revealing, protecting. This robust angelology, where heavenly beings actively participate in human affairs, mirrors Jubilees' world, where angels constantly oversee earthly events. Perhaps the most striking parallel comes in the temptation narratives found in Matthew and Luke. Here, Jesus is led into the wilderness to be tempted by Satan, or, as some manuscripts put it, the tempter. In Jubilees, the chief adversary is not named Satan but Mastema, a figure who tests humans and acts as their accuser before God. Both texts present a vision of cosmic testing, where faithfulness must be proven through resistance to powerful temptation. The Gospel of John opens with a prologue about the word, logos, that existed in the beginning and through which all things were made. While this has clear connections to Greek philosophy, it also resonates with Jubilees' description of creation through divine speech and its interest in what existed before the physical world. Both texts look beyond Genesis to what came before in the beginning. Jesus' arguments about Sabbath observance in the Gospels take on new depth when read alongside Jubilees. When he says the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath, he is engaging with debates about Sabbath strictness that were already happening in texts like Jubilees, which has some of the most detailed Sabbath regulations in ancient Jewish literature. The Gospel portrayals of Jesus celebrating Jewish festivals like Passover, tabernacles, and dedication show him engaging with the sacred calendar that was so central to Jubilees. When John's Gospel emphasizes that certain events happen during specific festivals, it is tapping into the same sensitivity to sacred timing that permeates Jubilees. Even the gospel emphasis on Jesus as fulfilling scripture follows a pattern similar to how Jubilees presents events as fulfilling what was written on heavenly tablets. Both see history as the unfolding of what was already determined, though the Gospels place more emphasis on human response within that unfolding plan. These parallels do not mean early Christians were secret readers of Jubilees. Rather, they suggest that the religious world that produced both Jubilees and early Christianity shared certain concerns about time, purity, cosmic conflict, and divine planning. Ideas that appear in Jubilees were not isolated oddities, but part of the intellectual atmosphere that early Christians breathed. Understanding these connections helps us see the Gospels not as complete breaks from Jewish tradition, but as creative reinterpretations within it. The early followers of Jesus were not rejecting Jewish ideas, but reshaping them around their experience of him. And some of the ideas they were reshaping had already found expression in texts like Jubilees. The subtle echoes between Jubilees and the Gospels remind us that boundaries between religious groups were more fluid than we often imagine. Ideas flowed back and forth between different Jewish communities. Concepts that seemed distinctive to one group often appeared in modified form among others. The Gospel writers drew from this common pool of ideas even as they created something new. For modern readers, these connections offer a richer understanding of both texts. Jubilees helps us see the Jewish thought world that shaped early Christianity, and the Gospels show how ancient ideas could be reimagined in light of new experiences. Together, they reveal the complex, creative dialogue that has always characterized religious thought. In the end, perhaps what links Jubilees and the Gospels most deeply is their shared conviction that human history is not random. Both see time as meaningful, moving toward fulfillment of divine purposes. Both believe heaven and earth are connected by more than occasional miracles. And both trust that behind the chaos of human events lies a pattern, a script written by the same hand that created the stars. Jubilees and modern fundamentalism. In tucked-away corners of our world, hidden from mainstream view, small groups of believers have rediscovered the Book of Jubilees. They have dusted off its ancient pages and found something that speaks to their hearts. These are folks who feel the modern world has gone astray, who long for clear rules and divine order in a chaotic time. What draws them to this ancient text? For many, it is the precision. Jubilees offers what many religious texts do not: exact dates, specific rules, and a cosmic timetable. In a world where truth seems slippery, Jubilees feels solid. It maps out history from start to finish with heavenly authority. Some groups have even rebuilt their lives around the 364-day calendar. They mark their days not by our modern calendar, but by the one they believe God gave to Moses on Mount Sinai. Each week flows perfectly, 52 weeks of exactly 7 days each. The sun, not the moon, guides their holy days. They see our modern calendars as tools of confusion, created to pull us from divine rhythms. "The world wants you lost in time," one leader told his followers. "But God wants you synchronized with heaven." These communities often keep to themselves. They build farms away from cities, raise children in the old ways, and wait for signs from above. They watch the skies not just for weather but for cosmic messages. The stars are not just distant suns to them. They are heavenly writing, telling stories only the faithful can read. What makes Jubilees so appealing to these groups is not just its rules, but its warnings. The book speaks of how humans strayed from God's perfect order. It tells of angels keeping records of our failings. For those who feel the modern world has fallen from grace, these passages ring true. Some communities take this further, seeing hidden patterns in world events that match Jubilees' prophecies. Wars, disasters, and social changes are not random to them, but follow the script written ages ago. They track these events, noting how they align with the book's timeline. Each match strengthens their faith. The internet has helped these groups find each other. Once isolated, they now share interpretations and insights across continents. Online forums buzz with discussions about angelic hierarchies and heavenly tablets. Videos explain how to follow the true calendar. What was once knowledge held by a few has spread to many. Not all who embrace Jubilees live apart from society. Some hold regular jobs and raise families in suburbs while quietly following the book's teachings. They might celebrate different holy days than their neighbors or avoid certain foods on specific dates. From the outside, their lives look ordinary, but their inner worlds run on heavenly time. Critics worry about these movements. They point to the book's rigid rules and harsh judgments. Some see unhealthy control disguised as divine order. When leaders claim to understand God's timetable, followers sometimes make choices that harm themselves or others. Several groups have made failed predictions about the end times, leaving members devastated. Yet many find genuine peace in living by Jubilee's code. They speak of feeling aligned with something greater than themselves. Daily life gains meaning when each moment connects to cosmic patterns. Even simple acts like eating or resting become sacred when done according to heavenly law. One woman who grew up in such a community remembered, "We knew exactly who we were and where we belonged in God's plan." The world outside seemed lost, making up rules as they went along. We had certainty. What truly drives this renewed interest in Jubilees is not just religious fervor, but a human need for meaning. In a world that changes faster each day, where traditions fade and new technologies reshape how we live, Jubilees offers an anchor. Its message is clear. There is a plan, there are rules, and heaven is watching. Whether seen as fringe believers or faithful keepers of ancient wisdom, these communities remind us how powerful old stories remain. They show how a text lost for centuries can find new life in modern hearts. The Book of Jubilees, once forgotten, now shapes lives again, proving that sacred words never truly die. They just wait to be rediscovered. The God who keeps time. Imagine the universe as a vast clock, its gears turning with perfect precision. Stars sweep across the night skies, seasons change without fail, and life follows its endless cycle of birth and death. At the center of this cosmic timepiece stands a watchmaker, the God of Jubilees. This is not the distant creator who sets the world spinning and steps away. Nor is it the emotional, sometimes angry deity of later scriptures. The God revealed in the Book of Jubilees is the master of moments, the keeper of days, the one who counts each sunset and sunrise with careful attention. When we read Genesis, we find a God who creates with words. "Let there be light," he says, and light appears. But in Jubilees, the same God does not just create, he schedules. Each element of creation arrives at its appointed time, marked on a divine calendar. Animals, plants, humans, all make their entrance according to a script written before time began. For thus it is engraved and ordained on the heavenly tablets, Jubilees tells us again and again. These tablets, mentioned over 30 times in the text, are God's master plan, not just for what will happen, but when it must occur. What kind of deity counts days with such care? What does it mean to worship a God who tracks time? For the writers of Jubilees, this precision was not cold or mechanical. It was deeply reassuring. In an ancient world where life felt chaotic and empires rose and fell without warning, the idea of a God who kept perfect time meant nothing happened by chance. History was not random but unfolded according to plan. Even suffering had its season, its marked place in the divine timetable. This God notices when we step outside his schedule. The text warns repeatedly about observing holy days at the wrong time, not just as a mistake, but as a serious offense. To follow a different calendar is not just inconvenient. It means stepping outside God's ordained rhythm for human life. He who changes the days will be cut off, warns the angelic voice. To follow the wrong calendar is to live in a different reality than the one God created. Yet this timekeeper God is not distant. He walks with Adam in Eden's garden. He speaks directly to Noah, Abraham, and Moses. He makes covenants, promises that span generations. The God of Jubilees is intimately involved with human affairs while maintaining cosmic order. This balance between closeness and order, between love and law, speaks to something deep in human hearts. We long for both freedom and structure, for divine love and cosmic meaning. The God of Jubilees offers both. Though weighted heavily toward order, what would it mean to live with such a God, watching over your days? To believe each sunrise is not just another day, but a specific day marked in heaven's ledger. For many ancient believers, this view brought comfort. Their lives gained meaning by connecting to heaven's timeline. Nothing was random, everything had purpose. Even today, many find peace in structured religious time. The call to prayer 5 times daily, the Sabbath rest, the yearly round of holy days. These practices connect human lives to something greater. They transform ordinary moments into sacred time. The modern world often tells us time is money, something to spend or save, to use efficiently. We race against the clock, trying to pack more into each hour. Jubilees offers a different vision, time as a gift, a creation as precious as the earth itself. Each day follows divine design. Perhaps that is why this ancient vision still speaks to us. In our rushed lives, the idea of divine order brings comfort. The God who counts days reminds us each moment matters. Whether we believe in heavenly tablets or not, this message touches something in our souls. The ticking clock, the changing seasons, the rhythm of breath, all hint at patterns beyond our making. The Book of Jubilees simply gives these patterns a name, a purpose, and places them in the hands of a God who not only creates but keeps perfect time. The angels are watching. Look up at the sky tonight. According to the Book of Jubilees, you are not alone in your watching. Eyes gaze back. Not just stars, but angels assigned to every nation, every natural force, every human choice. They hover unseen, keeping records of all we do. This network of heavenly watchers forms one of Jubilee's most striking features. Unlike the sparse angel appearances in Genesis, Jubilees portrays a universe buzzing with spiritual beings. They are not just messengers but active agents in creation, overseers of nature, and most troubling, celestial spies. And he appointed spirits to rule over all, the text explains, listing angels over fire, wind, clouds, darkness, snow, hail, frost, even over the sounds that thunder makes. Nothing in nature operates without angelic direction. The world is not a machine running on natural laws, but a living system managed by conscious beings. These angels do not just manage nature, they watch humans closely. Every good deed, every sin goes into their books. Nothing escapes their notice. They report directly to God, creating a celestial surveillance system that spans the globe. For the original readers, this vision brought both comfort and fear. Comfort in knowing the world was not chaos, but carefully managed. Fear in realizing every action had a witness, every sin a record keeper. But these angels are not just passive observers. Some actively help humans stay on the right path. When Abraham rejects idol worship, angels guide him. When Noah needs to build the ark, heavenly beings provide instructions. The faithful never walk alone. Other angels bring trouble. Chief among these is Mastema, Jubilee's stand-in for Satan. He leads forces that tempt humans away from God's law. Unlike the subtle serpent in Genesis, Mastema operates openly, even challenging God directly. He requests permission to test humans, arguing they need to prove their faithfulness. This cosmic drama, angels of light versus angels of darkness, with humans caught in between, creates a different kind of spiritual landscape than Genesis presents. Humans are not making free choices in a neutral world, but navigating a battlefield between opposing spiritual forces. What does this mean for human freedom? If angels monitor our every move and demons actively work to trip us up, how much choice do we really have? Jubilees does not fully answer this question, but it suggests our choices matter precisely because they are being recorded. In some ways, this angelic surveillance system feels unnervingly modern. We live in a world of security cameras and internet tracking and data collection. Our phones log our movements. Our online activities generate profiles. Privacy feels increasingly rare. Jubilees described a watched world, thousands of years before technology made it possible. Some scholars see this emphasis on angelic watching as a tool for social control. If people believe invisible beings record their every action, they might behave better even when human authorities are not watching. The angels become the ultimate enforcement mechanism for religious law, more effective than any human police force. This interpretation views Jubilees as somewhat dystopian, a world where freedom shrinks under constant observation. The heavenly tablets do not just record history, they control it. Humans become actors, following a script rather than writers of their own stories. Yet many believers find comfort in this vision. The angels are not just watching to catch mistakes, but to guide and protect. Their presence means we are never truly alone, never forgotten by heaven. Even in our darkest moments, celestial beings stand nearby, ready to help if we ask. The angels of the presence and the angels of sanctification, Jubilee's highest angelic orders, do not just record human failings, but human prayers. They carry our hopes heavenward, ensuring God hears every whispered request. This balance between comfort and control, between guidance and surveillance, gives Jubilees its unique spiritual flavor. Its universe feels more crowded than Genesis, more structured, more watched. Whether this vision brings peace or anxiety depends largely on how we feel about being seen. In our age of privacy concerns and data collection, perhaps Jubilees speaks with new relevance. Its message that nothing is truly hidden, that our actions have witnesses, might serve as either warning or comfort. The angels are watching. The question is, how does that make you feel? Time is a test. Time does not just pass in the Book of Jubilees. It tests us. Each day offers a choice. Will we align with heaven's rhythm or follow our own beat? Will we honor God's timetable or create our own calendar? These are not just scheduling decisions, but spiritual crossroads. This view transforms ordinary days into moments of deep meaning. Tuesday is not just Tuesday. It is the third day of the week God established at creation. A full moon is not just a celestial event. It is a potential trap, tempting believers to follow lunar calendars instead of the divine solar year. For the writers of Jubilees, getting the calendar right was not just about marking days correctly. It was about staying in step with heaven itself. Following the wrong calendar meant living in a different reality than the one God created. A dangerous spiritual territory where angels could not fully protect you. For there will be those who will make observations of the moon, the text warns, and this will disturb the seasons and make the years shorter. This is not just astronomy, but apostasy, a turning away from divine order. The stakes could not be higher. Time itself becomes a test of faith, separating true believers from those who compromise. Those who pass this test prove themselves worthy of divine favor. Those who fail risk joining the ranks of the fallen, cut off from heaven's protection. This pressure creates a specific kind of spiritual psychology, one where believers live with constant awareness of time's sacred nature. Every sunset, every Sabbath, every festival becomes a chance to demonstrate faithfulness. The calendar is not just a tool, but a spiritual discipline. Imagine living this way, waking each morning aware that today has been marked in heaven's tablets since before creation. Your alignment with cosmic time proves your devotion. Each holy day, observed correctly, brings you closer to angelic harmony. Each festival missed or marked at the wrong time pulls you toward chaos. For many believers, this framework brought comfort through structure. Human life gained meaning by connecting to eternal patterns. Daily routines were not just habits, but sacred acts linking earth to heaven. Time was not something that happened to you, but something you participated in mindfully. Modern psychology might see something different here: the anxiety of perfectionism, the weight of constant testing. When every day becomes a pass-fail spiritual exam, where is the room for grace? When calendar keeping determines salvation, what happens to those who make honest mistakes? Jubilees does not ignore these concerns entirely. It acknowledges human weakness while insisting on divine standards. The patriarchs in its stories sometimes fail God's tests, yet receive second chances. Time tests humans, but also teaches them, giving opportunities to learn and grow. This tension between rigid cosmic order and human frailty gives Jubilees its unique spiritual flavor. It offers both the comfort of divine structure and the challenge of living up to it. Time becomes both gift and burden, both blessing and trial. Perhaps that is why the book resonated with communities feeling pressured by outside cultures. For Jews living under Greek or Roman influence, where foreign calendars threatened traditional practices, Jubilees offered cosmic reassurance. Their calendar was not just one option among many, but heaven's own rhythm. Defending it meant defending reality itself. Many spiritual traditions share this view of time as a testing ground. From Buddhist mindfulness to Muslim prayer schedules, from Jewish Sabbath observance to Christian liturgical years, religious time creates space for spiritual growth. These practices transform clock time into soul time, turning passing hours into opportunities for transformation. The Book of Jubilees simply takes this common insight to cosmic levels. Time does not just test our attention or discipline, but our very place in God's order. Each tick of the clock becomes a heartbeat of faith. Whether we share this exact view or not, Jubilees reminds us that how we spend our days matters deeply. Time is not just something that passes, but something we can fill with meaning. Each moment offers choices that shape who we become. In a world obsessed with saving time, spending time, and killing time, Jubilees suggests something different: sanctifying time, making each day count, not by what we accomplish, but by how we align with something greater than ourselves. What if Jubilees was right? The sun slips below the horizon, marking another day complete. According to the Book of Jubilees, this sunset is not just a natural event, but a turning page in heaven's cosmic calendar. Another day recorded, another step closer to the end of time's great story. We have journeyed far with this ancient text, exploring its strange angels, its precise timelines, its vision of a universe run like perfect clockwork. Now we reach the moment for quiet reflection. What if Jubilees was right? Not necessarily in every detail, not in its rigid calendar or its harsh judgments, but in its core insight, that time unfolds according to a plan, that history has direction, that our days fit into patterns we did not create, but can discover. Modern science tells us the universe runs on laws. Gravity pulls, light travels, atoms bond in predictable ways. Is it so strange to imagine these physical laws mirror deeper patterns, that time itself follows a script written at creation? The writers of Jubilees believe the world makes sense, not just physically, but morally and spiritually. Events do not happen randomly, but fulfill purposes set long ago. Human lives are not meaningless, but play roles in a cosmic drama. History is not just one thing after another, but a story with beginning, middle, and end. This view offers comfort in troubled times. When the world seems chaotic, when violence and suffering appear random, Jubilees whispers, there is a plan. Even if we cannot see it clearly, even if we do not understand its twists and turns, the story has an author who knows where it is heading. Of course, this comfort comes with challenges. If time runs on rails laid by divine will, what happens to human freedom? If angels record our every move according to heavenly expectations, how much choice do we really have? Jubilees does not fully resolve this tension. It presents humans making real choices, while also suggesting these choices fulfill ancient prophecies. Free will and divine plan somehow coexist, though the book leans heavily toward destiny over freedom. Perhaps the question is not whether time follows a script, but who wrote it and how flexible that script might be. Even if patterns exist, perhaps they allow for improvisation, for surprising turns, for human creativity within cosmic structure. Many modern believers find middle ground here. They see God setting broader patterns while leaving room for human choices. They believe time has direction without determining every detail. The future holds both certainty and surprise, divine promises that will come true through unpredictable human actions. What might we gain by taking Jubilees seriously, even if not literally? Perhaps a deeper sense of meaning in ordinary moments. Perhaps greater patience when life seems random or unfair. Perhaps hope that scattered events will eventually reveal their purpose, like puzzle pieces, forming a picture we could not see while placing them. The book also challenges our modern attitude toward time. We treat time as a resource to use efficiently, a commodity to save or spend. Jubilees suggests time is neither a resource nor a commodity, but a revelation, each moment unveiling something about reality's true nature. This view transforms how we live our days. Monday morning traffic is not just wasted time, but part of a pattern with meaning. A child's birthday is not just another year past, but a marker in cosmic time. Every sunset, every season, connects to rhythms established at creation. Whether we embrace Jubilees fully or hold it at a thoughtful distance, its vision reminds us of questions worth asking. Does history have direction? Do patterns exist beyond what we create? Does time reveal something greater than itself? These questions matter not just for religious believers, but for everyone who seeks meaning in life's flow. They touch our deepest human concerns, where we came from, where we are going, and whether our brief lives connect to something lasting. Perhaps that is why Jubilees survived when so many ancient texts disappeared. Its vision speaks to something we still hunger for, assurance that our days matter, that time leads somewhere, that behind the world's chaos lies meaning. The sun will rise tomorrow, continuing the cycle Jubilees claimed was established at creation. As it does, perhaps we might pause to consider, what if this ancient book glimpsed something true about time's deeper nature? What if our days unfold not just by chance, but as part of a story written in the stars? Maybe the real question is not what Jubilees got wrong, but what it got right.